please.
Yes, Godfrey.
Here.
Henschel.
Here.
Horth. Here. Motor.
Here.
Pennell.
Yes.
Uselman, yes, and Schreider.
I am here. We have established a quorum at 5 p.m. Please join me in a moment of reflection, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. One announcement today. Following the adjournment of the regular meeting, the board will convene in a workshop to discuss suggested revisions to Neola policies in volume 32-2. We have now come up to the first part, our first public comment of the evening. Just a reminder, if you want to approach the board, this is the first time to do so. 10 minutes per topic, 5 minutes per person. As we do at every meeting, I am going to reference 0167.3 public comment at board meetings, reminding our participant that the presiding officer is guided by the following rules. Letter F, all statements shall be directed to the presiding officer. No person may address or question board members individually. Letter G, the presiding officer will interrupt, warn, or terminate if the participant's statement is too lengthy, personally directed, abusive, obscene, or irrelevant. The presiding officer will request any individual to leave the meeting when that person does not observe reasonable decorum. The presiding officer will request the assistance of law enforcement officers in the removal of a disorderly person when that person's conduct interferes with the orderly progress of the meeting. And lastly, the presiding officer will call for a recess or an adjournment to another time when the lack of public decorum so interferes with the orderly conduct of the meeting as to warrant such action. With that being said, public comment is now open. If anybody would like to approach the board, please do so.
Dan Ireland, Fond du Lac. My discussion tonight is on, it's been 4 years since COVID, and what have we learned? By Dr. and Senator Rand Paul. Totalitarian government run by the CCP would seek to cover up its responsibility to the worldwide pandemic. More importantly, though, was a cover-up in our own country, orchestrated by a Dr. Fauci and fellow health bureaucrats. This was a deception that was uncovered by a federal judge who ordered the release of the emails. They showed that they were in agreement that the virus was released from a lab in Wuhan, China, while telling us otherwise. Who helped fund this research lab? Under Fauci's direction, they had funded research there for many years in Wuhan. They also knew that a paper was written by Ralph Barrick and and described gain of function, or GOF, research, combining two viruses to make them something more dangerous. Robert Keldick, Secretary for the Preparation Response for Our Health in Washington, he was the chairman of the committee screening gain of function research and for safety concerns. The Wuhan coronavirus research never came before his committee. How can this GOF be controlled by we the people? A group of 34 scientists presented reforms to strengthen the federal government's pandemic pathogen process. GOF experiments that confer human transmission ability on a pathogen should be highly regulated. Current regulations allow for GOF research if it helps to develop a vaccination. We should treat the research of GOF like we do nuclear weapons because of the potential harm for life on the planet. Molecular biologist Richard Ebright recommended a responsible oversight, single independent federal agency that does not do research and does not fund research. The Nuclear Regulatory Commission provides a template or a model for this. Finally, C.S. Lewis described it quite well. We may have a bureaucracy, he described the bureaucracy best. Of all the tyrannies, a tyranny sincerely exercised for the good of the victims may be the most oppressive. Those who torment us for our own good will torment us without end, for they will do so with the approval of their conscience. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ryan.
Yep.
Anyone else wishing to address the board? Okay, let's put that out.
Jim Hess, thank you. I'd like to talk about the student group performance levels of the Fond du Lac High School achievement gap. I see we're going to be talking about that in the agenda tonight. These are for the last 3 years, and this covers black students, Hispanic students, and white students, and in English language and math, and compares it the below basic. And there are 4 target areas. They are below basic is the first one, then basic, and then proficient, and then advanced. We're covering here the below basic. And this last year, and these last 3 years, they have gotten better, and that is wonderful. But there is quite a gap between black students and Hispanics and white. We see right here, 68% is the English language, and then 39% for Hispanic, and whites are at 26% of the students are at below basic. In math, it's black students are 76%, Hispanic 55%, and whites 28%. That's a 14% difference between Hispanics and whites, and 43% difference between black and white students. I mean, that is quite a gap. Below proficient, 58% of our white students are below proficient. 82% of the Hispanic students are below proficient, and sadly 100% of black students are below proficient. The 3 Fond du Lac middle schools have similar numbers. For over 30 years, these groups, these gaps have been occurring. For a government institution that prides itself in not being racist and is for disadvantaged students, this is not a good thing. Question: isn't separating students into ethnic minority groups racist? ethnic means belonging to a population group who share a common descent. But today, did you know the word ethnic is offensive? Yet that's what we are doing here by separating into groups. Again, I believe our public schools have been infiltrated by Marxist theology. Evidence of that would be the removal of God and the Ten Commandments from school back in 1962. Karl Marx hated God, and Marxism contends that any society that features class conflict and class inequality by necessity has class oppression, and therefore a new society must be formed without class inequality. The oppressor in America are white folks. It's the label they're stuck with for life. A resource for Marxism is the Communist Manifesto. Marxism is identity politics, pitting one minority group against another. In 2020, BLM co-founder Patrice Cullors said in an interview that went viral, "We are trained Marxists."
About 30 seconds, Mr. Hess.
Okay? The goal on the BLM website is to disrupt the Western nuclear family. That's what she says as the founder. Could that be why so many minority children are struggling in school?
About 10 seconds.
Okay. The goal, Marxism has to destroy the family, faith in God, and property ownership rights. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hess. Is there anyone else wishing to approach the board? I'll get that right yet tonight. Seeing none, we'll close public comment for this evening and move on to the approval of our consent resolution agenda. The board members have been provided background material and information on each item or have discussed it at a previous meeting. These items will be acted upon with one vote without discussion. Any board member may remove an item from the agenda. This item will be discussed and voted on separately under the agenda item of individually considered resolutions.
I move to approve the consent agenda as follows. A, Chief of Finance Operations. Number 1, resignation, Hannah Anderson, speech and language pathologist at Roberts Elementary School, effective at the end of the day on February 13th, 2024.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Henschel, seconded by Mr. Godfrey. Can we have the roll call, please?
Godfrey.
Yes.
Henschel.
Yes.
Horth.
Yes.
Motor.
Yes.
Panau.
Yes.
Uselman, yes. Schreider.
Yes.
Thank you.
Motion carries 7-0 to accept the resignation of Hannah Anderson. We'll now move on to individually considered resolutions.
I move the Board of Education approve the retirement of Timothy Shipper, Woodworth Middle School principal, effective at the end of the day, June 30th, 2024, and that the Board of Education express its deep appreciation for his many contributions and dedicated service to students and staff of the district for these past 31 years.
Second.
We're going to go with the motion by Mr. Godfrey, seconded by Mrs. Uselman. Dr. Flagg?
Thank you. Mr. Shipper, on behalf of the administrative team, I want to say thank you. You've done an outstanding job serving our district as a teacher at Woodworth, an assistant principal at Woodworth. You worked next door for a number of years, and then you went at Riverside and then went to Woodworth. And as I said on the radio today, Tim, you've never met anybody you didn't like. And you know every student by name. and everybody worked for you by name. And I want to say thank you. I'm going to miss you, but I have a feeling our paths are going to cross probably when my phone rings at some point for you that I need some help. So, but I appreciate everything you've done, your dedicated service to our district, our students, our families, and our staff. So wish you nothing but the best. But I'm sure we're going to be crossing paths. Thank you very much.
And Tim, I don't want to speak for the whole Board of Education because each of us know you and have worked with you in some way, shape, or form over the course of many, many years. We are indebted to you for the service that you have provided for this district. We wish you well as you embark on this next chapter. Thank you. Can we have a vote, please? Sure.
Henschel,
Yes.
Porth,
Yes.
Motor,
Yes.
Pennell,
Yes.
Uselman, yes. Godfrey,
Yes.
Schreider.
Yes.
Thank you.
Motion carries 7-0 to approve the retirement of Timothy Shipper. Next one.
I move the Board of Education approve the Summer Recreational Department program fees for 2024 as presented.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Godfrey, seconded by Mr. Henschel. Dr. Flynn?
Mr. Graymont is here right now, and I'll have him take this, okay?
Okay.
Overall, do you have any questions on the fees as they're presented with the explanation in the memo first?
You and I talked a little bit before the meeting about a couple small changes, and that's satisfactory. I'm wondering about the softball restructuring of those fees. If you could just talk about that for a minute, please.
All right, softball restructuring really started, went out by Ken Ellingson, our programmer. We worked with FSI. Thank you, I appreciate the help. We worked with FSI at the fee structure, which hadn't changed in many years, in comparing it to other leagues that we are in competition with. And the simple answer is trying to simplify it, because really softball is a sport where we're losing teams. We're losing teams to other communities, other sports, other programs. So wanted to simplify the process and make it easier on the team managers, the team sponsors, and the individuals coming and participating, hopefully to increase participation in our leagues by making it an easier process. That's the bottom line.
So the three prices that are in the booklet this year versus two last year, what's the difference there?
I didn't bring it in front of me. One's rolled
sorry.
into the sponsor fee, and then the team player fees
Okay.
come in after that. So the initial fees, the team sponsor fee, which is paid, the teams come in, and then they have their base roster that they put in and have that fee there. And then I had it in my head that we reversed the 2 fees this year versus 3 from last year.
I see 3 fees for
Oh,
this
yeah,
year.
I got it.
I
Yep.
see 3.
Yep.
That's the breakdown on the groups that we have coming in.
So is those the price range in order for the sponsors plus the team or the total team? And then the player, the individual player at the end? That, the 175 amount, that's what, so you got for the adult softball?
We had it listed later. Sponsor fee, team fees, and then there's the FSI fee that goes to help support with FSI.
Okay.
And that's per team
Is
then?
that per team or
team.
per player?
Okay.
team.
Okay.
Yes,
So each
per
team pays the 190 and then the 175?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
All per team fees.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions at all?
So did it go, so as I'm looking at adult softball league's team fee, did it go from 35 to 325? Am I reading that wrong, or?
It sounds like an individual fee versus a whole team together.
Got it, got it, got
maybe?
it.
Right,
Thank you.
yes.
Got it, thank you.
So 12,
Yep,
12 people versus 10, if you want to, you can
Right.
split it. All right, that makes more sense now.
Okay. A little clarity now. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Everything else kind of seemed like it was trying to keep it pretty stable.
Trying to stay stable. I will be upfront. There are some increases in fees, but those increases, especially the pool fees, have not happened in 9 years. Just working, we've had increases in wages, increases in costs of running the pool, just trying to offset that and stay at the ratio that existed 9 years ago. If we would have stayed at that exact ratio, the fees would have more than doubled. So just a slight increase to offer that and keep it a fee accessible to our community.
Yeah, I'll just repeat what I've said in the past, is that a summer pass to our outdoor pools is less than you'd spend at one day in the water park down in the Dells. So it's a great value for your family, I think.
As long as the weather cooperates.
All right. Can we have the vote?
All right, so Horth.
Yes.
Motor,
yes.
Panow,
Yes.
Uselman, yes. Godfrey.
Yes.
Henschel.
Yes.
Schreider.
Yes.
Thank you.
Motion carries 7-0 to accept the Summer Recreation Department program fees for 2024. Next, we will move on to the board administrative reports. Dr. Flagg.
Thank you. First, we're going to review the age group reduction data reports February update, and I'm just going to, for the reviewing audience, I just want to provide a little bit of background information here before we get through that. The age group reduction program was established in the 2015-2016 school year and was fully replaced the Student Achievement Guarantee and Education Program, SAGE, at the end of the 17-18 school year. Based on a formula that uses each school's enrollment numbers and free reduced lunch, we are provided with state aid for staffing wages to keep our class sizes smaller in the primary grades. The AGR program allows for a participating school to meet the obligations of a 5-year contract by implementing one of the 3 strategies below, or a combination of these strategies in kindergarten through 3rd grade classrooms. So one of the strategies is one-to-one tutoring provided by a licensed teacher, instructional coaching for our teachers provided by a licensed teacher, or maintaining 18-to-1 or 30-to-2 classroom ratios, providing professional development on small group instruction. So as part of the contractual agreement between our district and state, we're required to submit data reports to the DPI as well as to present information to the school year every year by February 28th and June 30th. Schools have indicated which strategies they had chosen for both reading and math in grades K-3. Schools can choose to measure their objectives 2 to 3 times a year. So tonight in your report, you'll see that Evans does not have any mid-year data. They moved their data to May. So they will be reporting out in June at our second board meeting in June with their updated data. But we have Chegwins, Parksides, and Riversides are in there right now. So, but no, this is just for your review. As you can see with the data that's provided, you are seeing, of course, continue improvement upward where the data was provided. And this complements our district initiatives around literacy, math achievement. So, yeah, so that's kind of the update there for you in terms of the AGR program. Questions or comments? Or are you supposed to say that? Sorry.
So these were January numbers, most of these that
Yes.
were, okay, so
Yep.
they're halfway through the year and this
Half-
is where they're making progress?
And they might have been even late December numbers, yes,
Right,
because they had to submit the reports to me by the end of January. So yes, so it's a mid-year about, yes.
So you're seeing progress, but you're not expecting completion yet of those goals?
Right.
Yeah, okay.
Sorry for our viewing audience, the agenda went out and we'll have to deal with that later, so apologize.
Any other question? No, it was good to see that we continue on an upward trajectory as the incremental gains that we are making. It does continue to foster that collaboration, so.
What you see in all three of these schools is they do a very great job educating students K-2. All of them do. You can see the data's improving through and it's really a testament to the teachers doing the work. Our K-2 teachers are the most important teachers in the district. They set the tone for literacy down the road. And I think with our new literacy curriculum that we will be bringing for you all to adopt at some point here in May, will be really another game changer here. And the early returns are there. Our teachers are really enjoying it. So a lot of good stuff to come yet. So thank you.
Excellent. After that, we'll move on to the UVA Partnership with Leaders in Education winter updates.
At this time, I'd like Pyre to come up first. And as they walk up, I'm going to give a little background here for our viewing audiences. As you know, 2 years ago, or no, about a year and a half ago, we partnered with the University of, actually, it's about 2 years ago we signed on, but about a year, the work started about a year and a half ago. Partnership for Leaders in Education to really look to transform our schools and improve academic outcomes for our students, as well as build systems across the district of continuous improvement, support, and accountability for academic achievement. So I'm going to turn over to Ms. Hughes here from Pyre. I see Ms. Sparks is here, and Sarah's here.
Yes.
So, Sarah, I can't think of your last name right now. Thank you. Ms. Steenberg is here, too. I knew it was Sarah. Thank you. I had a little, sorry about that. Senior moment.
So Sarah teaches first grade at Pyre and Peyton teaches second grade at Pyre. Both are leadership team members. Sarah had the opportunity to go to Oklahoma to learn more with University of Virginia this winter and help reflect on our first 90 days of our plan and help set goals for our second 90 days of our plan. Then we brought those goals back to our leadership team where Peyton was part of reviewing those and making sure that we had the right action steps in place to pull everybody forward and continue positive growth at Pyre, which Peyton and Sarah are going to share in a little bit. There's been some really nice growth so far this first 90 days. So as we shared earlier in the school year, our goal is to change out academic outcomes for our students so that all students can have any door open to them and chase their own dreams. We are really using our targeted instruction time and really making great use of our reading specialist and also planning time during our CT meetings on Tuesdays after school, and now our data-driven instruction meetings that we have for math or our Bridges curriculum with each unit. We're backwards planning our units, looking at the assessments, making sure we know what students need to know, and having really good plans for making sure that they meet the standards they need to meet by the end of the unit. So we, as a staff, have truly embraced this piece of recognizing our opportunity to build our collective professional efficacy. We are building relationships with students using supportable solutions to help us grow in our capacity around that. And those relationships are really focused on learning and setting goals with our students. You can see our desired outcomes are to increase academic achievement based on our iReady data and our forward data. And we want our students to be very goal-orientated, aware of their current progress in learning, and making sure that they know where they're going in their learning and what steps they need to take to continue to grow. And like I said earlier, we are really on a good roll with our data-driven instruction meetings. So with that, I'm going to let Sarah and Peyton talk to you about more specific steps we're taking.
So, in regards to our first Big Rock, we're continuing to provide high-quality universal instruction, and we have 4 critical action steps that we've continued on with that. The first one, as Jenny said, we're using data-driven instruction, specifically around our Bridges math unit screeners. Teachers, some grades were giving those, some grades were not. Now everyone's committed to giving the screeners at the beginning of a unit and having a data-driven instruction meeting using the protocol that we learned in Oklahoma this winter. These are going really well. You can see a graphic on the other side about a 3rd grade practice meeting. And the notes are messy, but the work and what we leave the meetings with is not. We leave with really clear intentions and a very specific plan for students that are not ready for the learning, about what they're going to do, how they're going to do it, and when it's going to happen. And also when it's going to be assessed that they've learned whatever the missed skill or whatever was missed. So I think we've really embraced those meetings, and teachers are welcoming to them as far as we can tell. The second critical action step are that staff are continued to be paired in grade level teams to meet for 5 to 10 minute feedback times once every 2 weeks. This is an ongoing one that we carried over from our first 90-day plan. We have a wonderful group of really expert teachers at Pyre, and we want our teams to get really good at being comfortable meeting with each other and giving feedback and just being welcoming to having feedback. This is a continued growth one for us. The third critical action step is just to continue, like Jenny said, getting good at using targeted instruction time with our reading specialist and focus on individual students' growth, specifically, again, relating to reading. The last critical action step that we have is that teachers are now posting their lesson plans by their door. This is to help all specialists that come into the room know exactly what's being worked on at any given time. It just really helps everything be very transparent, that anyone can pick up and realize what the learning targets are and the lessons being taught at any time. So.
Our second big rock is to establish meaningful relationships that are focused on student learning. We've been focusing a lot of this work on developing assessment-capable learners, and that really goes beyond assessment, but having students be a part of their own learning process through motivation, goal setting, as Sarah mentioned, and feedback. We were introduced to this idea in August with an article, and leadership team has actually taken on a book study to dive into this a little bit deeper, reading about assessment-capable visible learners and learning ways to implement it in our classroom. So we've been really excited to do that work as a leadership team and then bring some of those ideas back to the staff. We are actually have an upcoming professional development day in March that we're going to share some more insight into assessment-capable visible learners with the rest of our staff. Some examples of things we're implementing, we focus a lot on I can statements, and in my classroom personally, I have my students be a part of that process with developing them and adjusting them, changing them. There's a visual on the back of your snapshot on what they look like in the classroom. They look the same in every classroom and in every grade level, so that way the students know what to expect and know what to look for when they move on to a different grade level. Even today, I was changing a different writing unit, and my students have gotten so good at it now that they are holding me accountable. I had kind of already had one in mind about writing opinions about books and sharing that through letters, and they said, wait, Mrs. Sparks, you should add about characters, because we were specifically focusing on characters in books. So they've become so used to it now and part of their own learning process that they're helping me write the I can statements. So it's been really exciting to implement and see. Another thing we have implemented just from reading about how important goal setting is for students is we've always kind of had reading goals for our students, but how can we be more intentional with this? And there's just been different ways that we've discussed that we can do this. I simply just, with my students, write reading goals on a sticky note that they take with them in their book bins. And again, it's either decided by me or they help me with that reading goal, and then they can go work on that back at their desk so that they have a purpose with their reading time. And I know Sarah had another way that's a little bit different,
Yeah.
but
My students have a similar idea, just a laminated goal card that they work with me on. We set a goal together, and whenever they're independently reading, their goal card is out, and we focus on making sure that they're focused on their practice and working towards their goals.
our second critical action step is our supportable solutions coaching that Jenny shared earlier, really focusing on relationships and also empathy and positive feedback. It's been nice to have the individual coaching for staff to set our own goals, but also a universal approach to students and classroom and behavior management, and a universal language to be using with them as well. And the third critical action step under this rock is providing instructional feedback during classroom observations. This coming from Mrs. Hughes to us teachers, but also amongst each other, as Sarah mentioned earlier, just to normalize feedback. We're expecting it amongst our students, so we're doing it with each other as well. So, thank you.
So, yes, as you saw in the back, then there are examples of some of the things that everyone spoke about. We keep track of the growth that students are making at Pyre, and we look at each student's growth, where they started the year, and then how much growth they've made. And we have conversations with grade levels around the targeted instruction that needs to take place when students aren't making the rate of growth that we need them to make to close gaps for each individual student as well. So, and any questions?
Well done. Thank you very much. Well done. Hold on. I just wanted to say well done, Sarah and Peyton and Jenny.
Nice try.
Well done. I just want to say well done. Very impressive. It's great to hear the great work you all are doing, so thank you.
So what does it mean?
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say what the literacy target, I can read books like they are gold. What's that?
Is that third grade? I think that's taken right out of our unit of study.
Okay.
It is.
The
It's a
reading goal.
teaching point from units of study, and the grade level teacher that wrote that isn't here to fully explain it, but
But-
it would be about really embracing reading and
Thank you.
digging into it deep.
Go ahead, Antonio. I just have a comment, and just while you guys are up here, as I do all the time. Sarah, you may have said, you had one comment here that out of all the updates that we've had so far, that I think is the most profound, really, and you weren't meaning it by that, but you said our notes are messy, but what we leave the meeting with is not. You know what I mean? And as we're changing this, and as you guys are going forward with this, that collaboration and that change, that is messy. You know, when you have so many people that are used to doing it different ways and everything else, and everybody wanting to come up with that perfect kind of fit that in. But for you to come out and say our notes are messy, but we leave the meeting, what we leave the meeting with is not, I think is absolutely fantastic, because that goes to show the embracing of what this is and what you guys are doing to change outcomes. So thank you for that, and I just want to let you know that out of all the updates we've had, that is by far and away the best statement that I've heard.
Thank you.
I was just, I was going to make a couple comments. Number one is, yeah, I mean, all my kids were alumni of Pyre, so there has been a lot of teaching turnover just because of people retiring and the natural occasion. So it's nice that everybody's coming in with the fresh ideas and learning and, changing the culture, with this new program. One thing I was going to say I heard was we look at each individual growth. We look at data and we're always looking at it at a bigger level. And it's always interesting, when you see, what you put on here at a bigger level, but it's really important that, each individual child is given that same opportunity of growth, because these are all percentages and we all know those outliers, on one end versus the other end, and not forgetting about bringing them along to help them improve. So I did appreciate that comment too. Thank you.
I just got one comment. I've seen you guys work on my visits, and our special friend that I always talk about, and to see the growth in him and to see where he was when I first met him, he's more dialed into his education now, and that's all the work of you guys. So thank you guys for taking on that task for him and for all the other students in the building, because I've seen the growth from a multitude of other students in that building as well, and that's all the test to you guys, and Jenny, you and your staff over there at Pyre. So thank you guys for all the tireless work and efforts that you guys put in on a daily basis. So thank you.
Thank you.
And I just have one question yet, because I asked it to all the other groups, so I'm going to keep asking it. How are our teachers, our special education and ELL teachers involved in the work that you're doing to serve our marginalized students?
That's a great question. So just as we are meeting with grade level teachers, Robin Winkler and I, the reading specialists, meet with teachers during their prep time often and look at individual data and then plan what that targeted instruction looks like for students. And then we have our DDI meetings around our math. Well, every Tuesday morning, Tricia Fridley, Brian Raby, that's our special education coach, and our school psychologist, myself, Robin Winkler again, the reading specialist, and I meet with our special education staff at 7:30 on Tuesdays. And again, we look at students' IEP goals, and then we look at their progress monitoring notes, and we talk about how students are growing with the SDI or the direct instruction that they get from their special education teachers, to see if it's helping them grow and what kind of modifications we need to make based on that progress monitoring information, as well as how we looked at their iReady data. Some was a huge celebration, some directed us back towards needing to relook at what kind of instruction we're giving those students. Our EL population, we have a wonderful EL teacher. Bridget Keys is amazing, and she is very, very busy. And so she and I often talk in the hallways as we're passing, going from classroom to classroom, and yes, often about specific students and based on how their growth is looking and what kind of support we need to give each teacher based on individuals' needs too.
Thank you for ensuring to target that, and that you do that on a weekly basis is
Yes.
wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you, ladies.
Okay, Mr. Wolfert, why don't you come on up with Rosenau, please?
All right, good afternoon. We're the Rosenau team. Matt Wolfert, building principal.
I'm Laura Makaroff, I'm the ELL teacher.
And we're here to update the team on our winter progress through the PLE piece. So as Dr. Flake started, the PLE is really looking at systems to reflect and refine so that we can increase the outcomes for our kids. So at Rosenau, what's our why? Our why is we work together to spark the minds, engage the hearts, and positively impact the lives of our students. Overall, we're looking to increase student achievement in literacy and math, measured on the iReady diagnostics and the Wisconsin State Forward. One specific goal is, it's ambitious, but we'd like to improve 5% on our literacy or our reading percentage on the Forward exam this year. So with that, the first semester we've really been honing in on and like laser focused on the ELA Common Core Standards for the state of Wisconsin, because that's what we're teaching. The curriculum is how we get there. So before we do the how, we have to really look at the what. And within that, it falls under some action steps that my teammates will talk about with our 2 rocks. So our first rock is intentionally planning for and delivering high quality universal instruction around math and reading. And then the second one is to openly give and take feedback that will positively impact not only student achievement, but our professional growth. And it's important that we put these 2 rocks at our forefront because they really work together. It's really neat. We were talking before we came here tonight, and reflecting, these 2 rocks really weave in and out between each other. And it's really important to us as a school because we were also tallying up out of 30 educators in our building full time, 47% or 14 out of the 30 are new to their position within the past 3 years, myself included, as well as Brandon. So these rocks have given us an opportunity to grow together for our students. And I'm going to step back and let Brandon and Laura talk about some action steps and what we've been doing.
All right. First one is rock number 1. We have 4 key action steps as well. The first one talks about the grade level teams participating in bi-weekly meetings. If you flip your sheet over, on the top left, you'll see an example of something that we do at our data meetings. We're, like Matt said, we're really honed in on the standards, and we'll use the assessments that were given to us by our curriculum coordinators, the spring interim, the winter interim, and we go through all the questions and identify key pieces that students just aren't there yet in doing, and we'll identify the standard, and we really just break it down. We read it, and as a team, it's principal, literacy, sometimes some other people will come in, like Lisa Neagle, and then like my 4th grade team will meet, we'll look at the standard and identify like what do the kids need to know before we even get here, and then where do we go for them to be masters, and we just get on the same page with the rigor that all 3 of us are looking for in all 3 of our different classrooms. We create an action step, and we leave the meeting with what we're going to assess for next time, what we're going to bring, and what's going to be best for each and every kid in all 3 of our classrooms, even though we're 3 different teachers. It's a really cool process. And then on the right side, you'll see kind of what a small group looks like after the data meeting. So we have resources. We bring small groups to the table. They're targeted with the exact skill that we're working on. And that example was a 3rd grade teacher doing a book club that they had talked about for the 3.2 standard. The second thing is professional development designed to guide K-5 teachers. The main thing that I love in that critical action step is being able to collaborate with the 2 other schools back here, Pyre and Waters. We've had PD days where we get to meet in the morning and discuss the level of rigor that we have for each unit that's upcoming in the Lucy curriculum. And it's just been a cool way to see what Roseno's rigor is compared to Waters' rigor, compared to Pyre's rigor, and then get on the same page across 3 different schools and just do what's truly best for kids in the Fond du Lac School District. It's a cool thing that we have going on right now. Third one, we have learning targets posted in each and every classroom. Those are on the same page as well. I know my team that I got to collaborate with Pyres and Water, we've made I-CAN statements that we've collaborated with from all 3 schools, that we're all on the same page of rigor there as well. On the 4th one, we intentionally plan those small groups each and every time based on the standard and data that we have from both the interims and from iReady data. Also on the bottom, you'll see an example of some of those groups as well. This one's a 1st grade example where we have exemplars. We've been really big on posting exemplars, having exemplars up for kids to use when they're going back and doing independent work on their own, and then being able to post their work and show what they're learning and just be able to be proud of what they're accomplishing in their classroom. Rock 2.
Rock 2. Like Matt said before, our Rock 2 is really focusing on feedback, giving and receiving. And our first critical action step was our literacy coach, Artosa, and our principal are working alongside teachers to build capacity around instructional planning and delivery of whole and small group lessons. This has been a critical part because it has set the climate and culture of our whole school, where it feels less scary and evaluatory when they come into our classroom. It's now like we are all working together to meet the same goal. Our second one is our leadership team has identified a list of expectations that promote high quality universal instruction. We're working on this right now as we can norm within our leadership team those expectations for high quality universal instruction if we have it between us, and then we can send it out so that all teachers in our school, whether it's classroom or specialists or encore, have all of those expectations on how to deliver that high quality instruction, then no one's getting missed. Let's see, our third one is the principal provides face-to-face feedback using Brambrick-Santoyo's, it's a hard name, feedback model. And it's rooted in student response to instruction, and this is, again, going back to that first action piece, where when any feedback is given, it's how did the students respond to that? It's less on what did you do and how do you fix it? So it's really pairing the teacher with the student, and instead of just on the practices of the teacher. And then our last one was classroom teachers have completed a nine session coaching cycle designed to enhance classroom management styles.
So with these big rocks, what are our desired outcomes? We're really looking for grade level teams to regularly use data-driven instruction to respond to student learning of the grade level standards and increase mastery, and therefore that would show through student achievement. And the second piece would be to build a culture of collaborative accountability and responsibility, which is the norm. With that, feedback would regularly be provided and accepted by all members of our team, myself included, because we view it as a tool to grow and to continuously learn so that our students can have better outcomes.
Matt, Brandon, Laura, thank you. Well done. Appreciate it. And Laura and Brandon, can you Brandon, fourth grade, correct?
Yep.
And Laura, EL, am I right?
Yep.
So just to give you an idea of the diversity of the team there that Matt has assembled at Rosano. So thank you all for coming. Don't leave yet. They're going to have questions for you. I don't, other than thank you, okay?
Getting comfortable.
Other than thank you very much, job well done.
So it's great to see that we have an EL representative on the team. And then, my follow-up question is, how are we engaging our special education as well as yourself in conversations regarding student achievement?
Do you want me to?
Yeah,
Okay.
you can talk. Yeah.
So one of the big things this year is, since we have those data meetings, granted I'm not always in all of the data meetings, but I've seen that as a whole, the grade level teams will then come back to me with the conversations that they've had, and we help build scaffolds for our EL students. But just because our EL students might be in one classroom, those scaffolds are used within the whole team. So now it's a whole team conversation rather than just maybe me and Brandon, and with all of them.
Sounds like you're working smarter instead of harder.
With that, like a long-term goal, something for next year is we're starting to think about system like the schedule. The master schedule is a huge piece that will allow people to be at the table, and then also we know that we have a lot of little bodies in the school throughout the day, and we're not always able to all be at the table. but what is a tool that we could effectively still collaborate, not necessarily like physically, but virtually. We all have computers that the district provides, and right now we have like our collaborative team agenda. We have a data meeting agenda. We'll be looking at for next year, how can we streamline it all together so that we can continue collaboration and effective communication.
Any other questions or comments? I don't think so. You guys are getting off easy tonight.
All right, thank you.
Great job.
All right, Ms. Bowers, and come on up. Ms. Schumacher, Ms. Dool are here, so I'll get better at this. Ms. Schumacher is a literacy coach at Waters, and Ms. Dool teaches second grade. They are here.
Good evening. Thank you so much for having us. It was exciting to sit and listen to my colleagues from Pyre and Rosenau this evening, because you're going to hear a lot of the same themes as we talk about some of the work we're doing right now at Waters. I want to say thank you to them. They've been wonderful partners. Both Jenny and Matt have been amazing to go through this with, and watching our teams, our staffs come together to do this collaborative learning the last few months has been really powerful. So I appreciate Brandon saving me from having to explain that. So thanks so much. So we are continuing with the same big rocks that we presented to you in the fall. We are committed to providing high-quality universal instruction of the standards for each and every student is our first big rock. And our second is that we are committed to creating engaging learning environments that are supported by feedback to our students. And so we're here tonight to share a little bit about some of the systems that we have put in place. We've had a very heavy focus on putting systems in place at Waters, and then also talk a little bit about what's to come at Waters for our staff and our students for the second semester. And I am joined this evening by Carrie Schumacher, literacy coach and leadership team member at Waters, and Angie Dool, second grade teacher and literacy team member as well. And they're going to walk you through the critical actions.
All right. First, I wanted to say thank you so much for providing us with the opportunity to travel to Oklahoma City to learn from Paul Bambrick-Santoyo and all of the experts at UVA PLE. Thank you. It was an incredible learning experience. So we took a lot from that that's going to help to drive our plan moving forward. As Krista had mentioned, we really worked hard to make some core systemic changes at Waters this year that have really helped to lay that foundation for the DDI work we learned about in Oklahoma City. So our first step, and Brandon talked a little bit about this, was to put in place a system for unit planning centered around the standards. So if you take a peek on the back of that 90-day snapshot, this is actually a document that we borrowed from our friends at Rosenau, and throughout the semester actually tweaked with Pyre and Rosenau just to make it a little bit more user-friendly to our staff and to their staffs. So what this is it helps us as we plan for our reading units. And before each reading unit, our teachers meet with their grade level teams at Waters, and also on those 3 occasions with Pyre and Rosenau, to really unpack the standards to determine what our students need to know and be able to do as they work towards mastery of the standards. So we've been working together to unpack and understand the rigor of each of the prioritized standards, discuss what proficiency looks like, create I can statements, determine the prerequisite skills, knowledge, vocabulary, and scaffolds that are needed, identify and administer CFAs to measure our students' learning, and then collaborate around instruction for each and every student. And this has really provided us with some wonderful opportunities, not only to collaborate and calibrate around the understandings and rigor that each and every student will learn, but also the process of sharing instructional assessment strategies, techniques, resources that Brandon had talked about. Our small group planning, collaborative planning cycles, that's on the bottom of the second page as well, have been particularly impactful. A system that we've put in place. So during these collaborative planning cycles, our grade level teachers meet together with me to really analyze all of the available data that we have and design targeted instruction to meet the needs of the kiddos that we are problem solving around or providing instruction for. So teachers set goals based upon the students' strengths and opportunities for growth. We design what instruction will look like and then determine what data we will collect along the way. And then 6 weeks after that, Kristen and I meet with grade level teams to check in on the students' progress or lack thereof and make adjustments as needed. We started with a focus in October on our students who were striving the most based upon our data from the spring, but then also the data that we collected in fall. And then along the way, we are in the midst of our second small group cycle, and we've been making decisions based upon the data that has come in throughout the fall semester. Throughout the year, I've had the opportunity to work and learn alongside our teachers, both inside and outside of the classroom, and my coaching has really been supporting them in the implementation of this targeted instruction, ultimately building collective teacher efficacy and then capacity along the way.
And just to piggyback off of what Carrie was just saying, and I feel a little redundant off of Brandon, but it obviously is, but it also proves to me how there was the one piece of this that really stuck out is having that opportunity to work with the other two staff groups, because our second grades, obviously second grade teachers, so it made a world of difference. We can meet all the time as a second grade staff at Waters and break apart and unpack every standard and see what rigor would look like at our second grade rooms, but to be able to compare with the other schools was priceless. It was, I mean, we would say that when we didn't have those professional days or those days built in, we're like, we actually kind of missed them when we were doing them on our own. So I feel, obviously, if we've all mentioned it, it's been a very valuable piece of that. Also, as the classroom teacher perspective, I would say not only that was, but also as Carrie mentioned, she gave you the example, but she comes to meet with us every single time throughout her 6 weeks. She goes above and beyond of taking the data from each and every student in our classroom, seeing a matter of taking our feedback, but also the data she has on her end to be able to come together. She doesn't force upon it. She has resources galore. It's the matter of finding us working together, comes in, we each do groups, and we work together to make our students gain in any area that they need to. So from the classroom teacher perspective, I think both of them were very invaluable sources. But to continue on with our DDI instruction, of basically after having to, thankful for the opportunity to go to Oklahoma City, priceless. There's no way you can ever come back and fulfill and give that information to others in the way that it was presented towards us. But it, again, priceless. It's a lot. It was a lot, but it was good. It was a good exhausting. You were exhausted at the end of the day just mentally because you had so much to go back and think about. So to me, that's valuable opposed to just sitting in a room and listening. It was very active. It had you different components of every piece of that any staff member would have in part of it. So that was completely priceless. We brought it back to our team, immediately started implementing the components that we had learned about it with the DDI process. Our kindergarten, second, and fourth grade teams are currently in that process of working through it, have had great feedback from the team themselves, and also with being able to implement it, that it's not taking extra time out of people's daily schedule or extra effort. It's very easy when you can come back and prove and show to others that, it isn't that much more beyond what we're currently doing, and it's very, I guess, it's very easy to manage, and so sometimes that's the struggle these days of putting more on a teacher's end, where we present it as it really isn't that much more than what we've already been currently doing. Our focus is on math, just like the other schools are, and we too are using Bridges screeners, so it's that pre-assessment before we teach the unit to kind of go ahead and find an insight of what students are missing or striving to still need prior to teaching it, so that we can hit it hard at the beginning and dig deep of realizing, okay, what needs to be retaught, whether it's whole group if there's something missing, if it's small group, where it's more of that intervention type mode. It's also looking at the why of a student is not understanding, opposed to just looking to a piece of data and saying, okay, half my class got number 10 wrong. It's actually looking at their work and realizing, okay, why does this particular student, what do I see in their work that proves to me the part that they're missing that we have to backtrack and reteach so they can be successful as they continue through the unit. Then we, as a whole staff, we've also brought it back in the matter of through different professional development and presenting to them the different pieces that we learned in Oklahoma City as well, where we're sharing them, as I said, through staff meetings, different professional development opportunities, not to overwhelm them, but to introduce the different components that are very key to making this successful, like the reteaching pieces and how it can look different within the classroom, how we can fit it within our daily schedule. And as well as our active monitoring of within our students. The second part with our Big Rock was more just focused, like others were, with our engagement and feedback. We too have supportable solutions coaches that are in our building, working with all staff, including Encore. And obviously, like anything, if you are actively engaged more, it's going to benefit no matter what age you are. So if we can find that way to make sure our students are constantly engaged in what we are doing, the gains on their end are just that much more positive, and they're that much more invested in what we're doing. So the nice thing of what they've done for us is that most staff have realized that we're doing a lot of good things. It's just a matter of a little bit of an adjustment to whether the way we phrase something or little reminders of sentence stems, just again to make sure that it's a direct, when we're giving feedback, it's not just good job or no, you're wrong. It's giving them that little extra push in that comment so that they understand, you know, and they're not just, they actually are invested in what you're saying to them so they can adjust accordingly. And the same thing, you know, with the engagement, finding ways to keep them actively involved so that they want to be part of it and it's not just us teaching at them. So we do have data as well. Carrie's going to bring that back up.
So these action steps have led to some really exciting growth for our students. The iReady program sets typical growth goals for our students based upon the average annual growth for a student at their grade and baseline placement level. So in December, the median percent progress towards typical growth for our school was already at 72%. So that was with only 3 months of instruction. Our kids are making great strides towards that typical growth goal and then moving towards that stretch goal, which is a little bit more ambitious of a goal. Overall, we saw an 11% increase in students who scored mid or above grade level, moving from 9% to 20%. And then furthermore, we had between 43 and 49% of students at each of our grade levels, 2, 3, 4, 5, who improved their placement level on the iReady diagnostic, so they're moving right in the right direction. And then we also had a school-wide reading goal based upon using the BAS. So at least 80% of our 1st through 5th grade students will demonstrate or exceed expected growth from fall to spring, so essentially making that year's growth. We set individualized goals for each of the students based upon where they assessed in the fall. At this point last year, we were at 22% of our students who had met their met or exceeded their expected growth goal. This year, we're at 47% of our 1st or 5th grade students, so 137 out of 294 of 1st through 5th graders who have already met their independent goals. So pretty exciting stuff.
Thank you. So our motto this year has been Together We Can, and we are working hard to put those things into place to help our students become everything that they can be. We are working towards 4 desired outcomes. We continue to push for 100% of our weekly collaborative team meetings to include that thorough unpacking of standard and assessment questions to ensure teachers understand the rigor. We have put in place the data-driven instruction for grades kindergarten, 2nd, and 4th grade, and we're addressing those learning gaps and planning for the reteaching of specific skills as we work towards mastery of standards. We're working to provide each and every student through targeted instruction with high-quality teaching and learning experiences, and we are working towards increasing in our academic outcomes for all students as measured by iReady.
So I want to start by saying thank you, Ms. Bowers, Ms. Schumacher, Ms. Stool. Great job, well done, and really appreciate the work you all are doing at Waters. Way it sounds, you have some great data already. We'll looking forward to see the data in the end of the year. So thank you all for your work. So the board will have some questions for you, I'm sure.
I don't have a question. I just have a comment, as usual. I noticed that you all have all said that you are collaborating and using the exact same resources. This works because multiple kids go through multiple buildings in our schools, and that way you don't have one school teaching one standard one way, and you don't have another school teaching it the other way. You guys are teaching it all together under one umbrella, and that's to be celebrated. Thank you all for that.
I also think it's great the way that you're all collaborating together, because I think sometimes we get comfortable in our own schools, and so when you're with other professionals that continue to raise you to the next level, so that's awesome. And how are you ensuring that our students with IEPs, as well as those who are emerging bilinguals, are accessing the standards and growing as well?
Yep, very similar to some of the things that you've already heard in terms of carving out that time. We're finding a similar barrier in terms of our master schedule, and so we're going to be looking to make sure that we can find some time where all the teams can get together, and maybe that is going to be in some sort of a virtual or a digital format, but every single staff member goes through any of the professional learning that we have. So if we're talking about modeling, guided discourse, reteaching, whatever it happens to be, everybody is there in the room so that we're all learning and growing together. We have a teacher of special education and a school psychologist on our leadership team. So that input is very valuable to the entire work we're doing at the building, and we're just going to keep learning and growing together.
You guys are all knocking it out of the park tonight, honestly. As we hear this, and we use collaboration all the time, but when you think PLE, it's partners and leaders in education. And for all three of you buildings to come together and really work together, because you're all three different in your own right in terms of what you have, I think is absolutely fantastic, and it gives us a bright future in terms of where we are going, and I look at those key words, even on your chart here, insanely clear, that you can't get much better than that than insanely clear. Not many people would see that. I think that's awesome. Carrie, you used the word collaborate, but the best word that I heard was calibrate, because it's one thing to collaborate and it's one thing then to come together and calibrate on the needs that you need for your specific kids. Keep up that great work. And then Angie, just like when we talked about with Sarah, you made a comment that is really, I'm going to leave here tonight with, because in my career, I always tell the people that I work with that I want you to tell us what you want to hear instead of what you think we want to hear. And you said it when you're teaching that, to get them to be a part of this learning instead of us just teaching at them. And when you have that and you can build that in, there is nothing more powerful than that. And you guys are working towards that, and it really, thank you to all of you tonight. Thank you to you guys for what you're doing for changing those outcomes. It's very appreciated. And I'm shaking my pencil.
I was just you threw a lot of data out there. Is it possible we can get an email to us?
With their data?
Yeah, you threw some out there. I was trying to write it, and I'm like, I gave up on it.
They probably couldn't fit it on the one page. I limit them to one page. I limit them to one page for a reason.
Yeah, you can email
It could be multiple pages.
I'm a visual person, but
Mr.
yeah.
Henschel has a hard time when he's got to write past two numbers.
Before we
Thank you very much for what you've
wrap
done.
up here, Mr. Steinbarth wanted to share a couple thoughts, and I'll close with a couple too overall. You guys can take a seat if you want. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
And this is the second time in 4 weeks that we've gotten to hear what some of our schools with the PLE partnership have been doing. The one piece that this group did not mention, though, the stage that they're at right now is about 9 months ahead of what we were at last year. So these three schools that talked about DDI repeatedly and the meetings and looking at the data and collaborating and really talking about the data, they are that far ahead because of the collaboration they've been doing with the other schools that have gone through this. I had talked to Amy and Nate a while ago, and I just said, how many of our schools have come to you to watch that data-driven instruction in place? And they said every single principal, as well as some teachers that they brought along, has been a part of that. And that's why they are so far ahead of where I think we were last year because of that work. But that is a testament to the principals and the teachers in our district that saw something working and want to copy that. And that's something that they talk about a lot in February or January when we were in Oklahoma with Paul Bambrick Santoyo, who directs Uncommon Schools, that once people start seeing this in action, it's infectious and they feel like they have to do it because it has such great results. And I think you see that here with what they're doing for our students. And so for that, I'm just very thankful for not only the principals last time, but these principals and staff members that did come up and share all the thinking that they're doing and the hard work, because as they said, it is exhausting with all of the UVA PLE components. They push our brains and they make us want to be better. So again, for the board to allow us to be a part of that has been huge, so thank you.
Thank you, Matt. And I think also the important role, I just want to highlight a couple things here. Matt plays a very important role as chief of schools. Is when that position was created, it was to really supervise principals. And as part of his job here, he's in these schools about every, 6 to 7 days for a visit, or try to be, for a very structured couple-hour visit to just exactly see what's going on. And I think the important part of this from the district level at the table that we sit at is setting conditions to accelerate change. We are not doing the change. The principals and the teachers are doing the change. We have merely set the conditions to accelerate change for our kids. And as we get into the second year of this partnership, the reason why they're able to go faster is because they're learning from Nate and Amy, Parkside, and Chegwin, and Dave on what they did a year ago. And then as we bring on all 3 middle schools for the third year, it's going to be even better. So I think it's just a real testament to the work they've been able to do when we just let them go after we set the conditions for them. So well done, all 3 of you. Thank you.
Awesome job.
Well, I just think, too, the way this is chunked up, it's like, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time, 90 days at a time. Each group of schools is chunked off from each other, and all those different ways that it's parsed apart so that, you're doing this work and you can really focus on what needs to be done in that span of time and in those areas of schools.
The teamwork alone, right? Teamwork makes the dream work.
Yep.
Honestly, for all of you to come together because you are so separate, I think it's a bright future. All right, we will close that. We'll move on to student and staff activities. We're going to start down by Mrs. Horth.
I got to go to my first school dance since I was probably in middle school. Not sure that's on my agenda anytime soon, but it was fun to see all the kids run around and spend time together.
Elementary one?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
So I was informed that it was 3rd through 5th grade, and then found out right before I left with my 4th grader that it was a whole school dance. I haven't quite figured out if she told me that on purpose so her little sister wouldn't come along, or if she really thought it was 3rd through 5th grade, but I only had my 4th grader there. But it was just neat to see them all be able to spend time together, like outside of school, but with all their school friends, and just run around and have fun. It was chaotic, but they all had a blast.
Did you take time as DJ?
No, I did not. And then the youth fast pitch camp hosted by the high school team started yesterday. So that's all I got.
Mr. Henschel.
Multiple sporting events. Got the fun of this last weekend seeing the state wrestling tournament down in Madison, which is quite the excitement if you haven't ever experienced it. We had 4 wrestlers miss it by 1 spot, 2 girls and 2 boys. So we're right there. They're young. We had 2 freshmen, a sophomore and a junior. So one young lady made it last year. She was hoping to make it back this year, just missed it. So, but it is kind of neat to see now they have the girls at the same location, doing it at the same time right alongside. Got to see a brother-sister from Milton actually win state titles at the same time in the mats next to each other.
Wow,
So it
that's
was pretty exciting. first time that would happen too. So, yeah, so that it's a lot of, now we got roll right into the spring stuff. I know track, I'm excited for our new coach at the track level with KJ, and it sounds like participation is really up quite a bit, and they got some captains running some practices the next couple of weeks before the coaches can get involved, and so it's just exciting to get that buzz going around the schools where we get more participation in different activities. So,
Mrs. Wilson.
Yeah, so, well, my last set of parent-teacher conferences was this past week, and it was great to get to see all the staff, and I got to peek in on a couple of students that I knew from Marion, too, that are new here, and they are doing phenomenal, and they are going for that ELL program that we started, which I was very excited to hear about that moving forward. And then I got to see the marching band performance. It was the Bucky Band.
Yeah.
Thank you, Badger Band. And we got about 9 students that used to go here that were part of that, and they were just dynamic as all get out. And then still volunteering at Rosenau, I recognize all these faces in the pictures here, and we're doing reading, we're doing math. We got to do some kindergarten math today, which was phenomenal. They're just so adorable. Oh my gosh. Anyway, so yeah, that's it.
All right. Mrs. Pennell?
I was able to attend the Fondy Midwinter Choral or Choirs concert. There were not all of them there, but there were 4 of them. Prima Voca. I'm having trouble reading because I'm borrowing Kate's glasses. The jam singers, the varsity bass choir, and the bel cante. And then additionally, they had 6 of the kids perform solo, and those were very good. They needed to be commended for getting up and doing so. And then surprisingly, once the concert ended, I noticed that 2 hours had passed. So I hadn't realized what an enjoyable evening it was. So I really valued it. I also attended the presentation by the author Rod Van Blake, and I understand that Mr. Blake has been a 20-plus year friend of Terrence Lofton's, and additionally he's a former Marine, and what I could assess from the introduction, he's a very competent, capable athlete as well. Given that history, in 2016, you could say he has found his calling, and in that he went out and wrote, which takes years, and had his first book published, which was in the genre of sci-fi. And since then, he has been able to write 6 novels, 6 literary novels, 2 graphic novels, and 2 comic books. And in 2021, he ventured into the world of fantasy. And so he has one of those 6 novels is a fantasy, and is seeming to be heading in that direction as well. Mr. Blake also mentioned that there are more books coming soon, and that he has a podcast available as well. And I brought one. So
There you go.
then I also was able to visit Riverside, Riverside's library, because I was continuing to visit with Jolene Horn. And my goal at that library visit was to, first off, only observe 4th and 5th graders and see how they checked out books, how they selected books, what books did they select and why. And so I was able to infiltrate and talk with them. And for the most part, there was a lot of security found in in one particular genre by each individual child. These ranged from sports to pets and animals to some biographies into the 5th graders, so fiction and nonfiction novels at the 5th grade level, but not at the 4th grade level. But while I was at Riverside, I learned more. And what I learned was about the parent well, I tried to find Jessica Hughes, but she was not available, but I was able to speak to Amy, at, Roberts, because this is a program that Roberts has also joined in on and has started this year. Roberts has gone through two team, well, you all know this because this is something that you have history with and have been familiar with. I have never heard of this approach before, and I was fascinated by it because what I learned at Riverside was that the longevity of Riverside, having it beginning with Tim Schiffer, I understand, and their data is showing that there is a lot of positive, stronger, higher numbers, higher attendance with familial support and familial action. So that, in light of what we had talked about in conjunction with the documentary, how do you provide and encourage and support familial support? So I'm looking further for Jessica Hughes to find that out, and we'll talk further with Roberts and their success as well.
Thank you. Mrs. Moore?
Nothing for me this last 2 weeks.
Okay. Mr. Godfrey?
Oh, boy. Oh, that's my turn. I also attended the event with Rob Van Blake. I found out, I learned something that my daughter is an avid fan of Rob Van Blake's work, and I also bought her a book. And if you ever want to see an adult young lady act like a 2-year-old child, buy her a book of one of her favorite authors, and you can see that. But I commend Terrence and Rob for that friendship they've had over the years. I also attended the Emerging Leadership Conference in Green Bay with Terrence, also with a few of the high school young ladies. And when I tell you that event, every time I attend that event, it is a powerful, powerful day. The day starts, they basic breakfast, they give the multiple breakout sessions. There are universities, financial aid officers from multiple universities and colleges from around the country. And if a kid wants to go to college and they leave out of that event without an offer, they didn't try. And it was just powerful that day. I mean, the young ladies were really, really afraid because they didn't know what they were getting into. By the end of that day, a lot of those young ladies' lives were changed in that moment from that powerful day. So thank you to Mr. Terrence Lofton for that day. The last couple of weeks I've been over at Evans Elementary School. I've had the privilege of reading last week to one of the kindergarten classes, and it was awesome to see and how those kids received the book that I chose. And it's so weird, and I didn't know this when I chose the book. The book is called I Am Smart, I Am Blessed, I Can. And all we heard tonight was I can. I had no idea that for whatever reason. And tomorrow I get to go read that exact same book to another group of kids over at Evans. And thank you to Mr. Schultes and those teachers over there for inviting multiple community members into the building to share and read to the students. So that's all.
All right. I've been out most of the last 2 weeks, traveling the state, getting educated at Festival College. So that's hard to do for me to get educated. My daughter took my spot at the Badger Band yesterday. You look at those collaborations, and we use that all the time with the band, the astronomers and the Badger Band and stuff, and it's just amazing what our fine art program really does and what it is, the impact it's having on our kids. the football staff has been meeting. They met this first time this past Saturday and next Saturday with a lot of the youth football coaches in the area, acclimating them about the programs that we have as well, and getting them involved. So it's that's been great to see on that level. So that would be my wrap-up. We are up to the second public comment of the evening. If anybody would like to come up and speak to the board. I am going to look out and gather that there is not at this time. So we will move on to any additional appropriate matters. Yes.
I just want to wish all our teachers, staff, students, families, administrators, and community stakeholders a happy Public Schools Week. Public schools literally are of, by, and for the community. All children are welcomed, regardless of abilities, family backgrounds, identities, or class. The goal is to connect with and educate each and every student, preparing them to join our community as productive members. I would add that public schools are accountable and transparent, as evidenced by the current open meeting, where the public is allowed to speak and question. We have publicly accessible data and information being shared, and the board is accountable to the community through elections. Just for kicks and giggles on the way here tonight, I Googled a couple of our local private schools, and only one even has board members listed, and there are no meetings listed or any kind of transparency or way for people to resolve issues if they have them. So I'm just really proud of what we're doing here, and happy Public Schools Week, everybody.
Did you say kicks and giggles? Just so I
I
get that
did.
right? All right. Anybody else? All right, seeing that, can we have a motion for adjournment to a workshop to discuss suggested Neola policy revisions to volume 32-2?
I move the Board of Education adjourn the regular meeting, convene in a workshop to discuss the suggested revisions to Neola policies in volume 32-2.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Henschel, seconded by Mr. Godfrey. Can we have the roll, please?
Yes. Okay, so Motor,
Yes.
Benau,
Yes.
Uselman, yes. Godfrey?
Yes.
Henschel?
Yes.
Horth?
Yes.
Schreider?
Yes, the regular Board of Education meeting is adjourned at 6:31 PM. guys ready? Workshop to discuss Neola revisions is called to order at 6:51 PM. Can we have the roll, please?
Godfrey.
Here.
Henschel.
Here.
Horth.
Here.
Motor.
Here.
Pinau. Here. Uselman and Schreider.
Still present. We are all here. Dr. Flagg, we're going to turn this over to you.
Okay. For a viewing audience, we have a Neola policy revisions that typically happen 2 to 3 times a year. And tonight is a workshop where we go through each policy change, and then at the next board meeting, we'll have our first reading, which will be in the first meeting of March, and the second meeting of March, will be the second reading. And after the second meeting, once the policy is approved a second time, they will go into effect immediately. So I just want to just share that with you. So I'm going to go through each policy revision right now. So yeah, hang on here. Here we go. So policy 0142.1, titled The Electoral Process, has been revised. This policy has been updated to clarify the requirements for a qualified elector to file a declaration of candidacy, as well as the requirements for incumbents seeking re-election. The legal citations have also been updated. It's recommended for consistency of statute. So you can see how policy has been revised for congruence with the law. Policy 0143, public expression of board members, has been revised. This policy has been updated to include instances when board members make statements to individuals or members of the community that may cause issues for the board and/or district if not made clear that those statements do not reflect the views of the board or their colleagues on the board. So this is the recommended policy, and so it's been revised with a few other additions there. Any questions?
Can I bring up a picky thing?
Yep.
So.
Yes.
Time to time, is that usually hyphenated? In the second paragraph? I've never seen it written like that. That was one thing.
Second paragraph.
So,
Down, where's,
from time to time, however, individual board members may make public statements on school matters.
oh. Do not know. That's how Neola gave it to us. We
I
do
know.
not.
The other thing I was noticing
We'll
is
have to check on that.
some of these policies are full justified and some of them are right justified. Like, are we going to make that all consistent at some point? I don't know. Just picky stuff. Like I said, picky. It's all presentation, but I think on the website they all come through as fully justified.
I think it's how we print them. Because we're
Okay.
printing these for you.
Yeah. Okay.
So we have to allow Todd to be a spokesperson.
What's that?
Okay.
You know what? In 2
We'll
months,
check on the time to time.
If you want it.
Yep, I'm unsure on that, okay?
It should not be hyphenated.
Okay, oh, you got it on the computer,
It's not
according to Google.
authoritative and is only found in yourdictionary.com.
Woot. All right.
Okay,
That should be without hyphen.
okay. Thank you for checking.
Fact checker right away.
There you go.
All
I'll
right.
just point out again that I was right, but
You were. Thank you, Linda.
Wow.
All right, policy 144.3, conflict of interest, has been revised. Languages have been added to this policy clarifying that board members may not be paid employee of the district. Also added in the statutory language that provides an opportunity for board members to serve as unpaid volunteers. The appropriate legal reference has been added, and it's recommended for comprehensiveness and clarity. Okay.
I think we're also allowed to be bus drivers as a volunteer.
You are.
position as
You just
well.
can't pay
Yeah.
you. Yep.
Yeah.
If anyone interested, let me know. So anyway,
I might be.
so policy 0164 meetings is new, but it combines policy. Yep. Yep. You bet.
A couple years ago, I did coach middle school wrestling.
Yep.
I did fill a piece of paper out saying I could get paid, they paid me. I said they didn't have to, but they did anyways. So, they're,
Where's the SRO?
our HR, Stacy said that I could, you just had to pay, you had to fill in some paperwork.
Yeah, that has changed now in policy due to conflict of interest.
All right, so
Okay. Yep.
Zero.
Yep.
Can't happen anymore.
No,
Way to ruin
correct.
it, Mark.
I was volunteering for 25 years anyway.
Way to
So-
ruin it, Mark.
So,
Yeah?
So policy 0164 combines policy 0164.1, 0164.2, 0165.1, and 0165.2. So those policies will be rescinded and will be replaced by this one, this policy has been revised to incorporate all references to meetings, including regular and special meetings, into a single policy specific to unified school districts, which we are. An additional optional language has been added to address virtual attendance. So that's been and we've had a few of you in here have participated virtually, and we will do that just to accommodate. It's not a problem, but it's just important to have it in policy. You know what I mean?
My question about the regular meetings, that very first section there, we've lost the language about there being 2 meetings a month except for July and December. Do we just want to leave it at the board shall hold at least 1 meeting per month?
Yes.
And be done?
Well, I don't know. I shouldn't
don't,
say.
well,
I shouldn't answer
we don't
that.
want to be more specific
It's
to
not
the
up to me.
public about what we do on a regular basis?
Sean?
I think that language was probably, that would have been language just specific to Fond du Lac.
Right.
When they redid it, they probably.
They're trying to make it general to lots of districts. Do we want to re-specify, or
We can re-specify it if we want to.
I don't know how other people feel about that, but I just feel like communicating with the public that we do normally have 2 meetings per month in case they thought, oh, I missed that one, now I have to wait a whole month.
We do meeting notices, yes.
I have a general question. Who is they and who revised them? And is this, best I could figure out, came out of Ohio or Indiana, and it is basically a legal handbook.
Yep.
Trying to protect everybody. So how far does the tentacles out of the origin, such as Ohio or Indiana, go? Is this a nationwide? Is this a regional wide? Is it a couple states?
Neola is
Is your
nationwide.
question about Neola itself?
Yeah.
Yeah, Neola is, I don't know how many states they're in. They're in a number, but they, being that we're in Wisconsin, all of our, if you notice, our policies are referenced with our state law or state statutes. So it's unique to Wisconsin, or our policies are unique to Wisconsin in terms of as aligning with our state laws.
Yes.
And what it does provide protection for the district in terms of, because it's aligned with also federal law in some
Right.
cases, as well as state law.
They do all the homework, and if we accept their work, we're covered by their legal blanket.
Neola is the they, and they are a group of lawyers, a group of...
It's actually, they have a legal team, but I believe it started years ago by a group of superintendents, and they have their own in-house legal team. I believe. I could be wrong in that, but
And so this is done from one central location for each individual state?
I do not know that. Our local rep is a retired Wisconsin superintendent who meets with us to go through these policies.
Well, it certainly saves a lot, it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
Yep.
For every district, but nevertheless, it's just interesting to know the history of this one and this one, that's all.
Yep. And then on the second page of this policy, Sean, there's an extra space in the cancellation of meetings paragraph, that last sentence where it says, reschedule the meeting or to the extent practical. Thanks.
Did we finish the conversation regarding,
Yeah,
Linda,
we
the
didn't-
point you
well,
brought up? Should we?
Mark thinks no, and what do others think?
So would someone, for example, go in our policies to say, what does ours, so this guarantees that we have at least 1. We typically do 2. We're covered because we do have it on our website as well as put out meeting notices. So maybe we don't want to say 2 just in case for some reason we don't have 2 during a month. I don't feel strongly one way or another. I just thought we should maybe finish that conversation.
Thanks for circling back. I don't have a dog in this fight. I just wanted to bring up that we dropped some extra language that was in the other policies.
I
So
just want to
however
make
you
sure
guys feel
that
about
if people in the public want to know, they can easily find out when we're having meetings or not having meetings, and that it's not, that we're just being transparent.
Mhm.
Right. Right.
Yeah, I don't think it's necessary
Okay.
to have it.
Okay. So keep it as is, as Neola recommends. Okay, cool.
Okay. So, as I said, policies 164.1, 164.2, 165.1, and 165.2 have all been combined into 164, policy 164. So next one is policy 1260, incapacity of the superintendent has been revised. Language has been added to this policy to providing temporary authority to the board president prior to the appointment of an interim superintendent when the current superintendent is incapacitated. This is not necessarily a legal update, but it's recommended for coverage of the contingency. Okay. Policy 1421. This is also policy 3121 and policy 4121. Criminal history record check and employee self-reporting requirements have been revised. The self-reporting requirement language in these policies has been revised for greater clarity. So if you take a look at the policy, they have provided further clarification on when an employee must report any type of crime that may be that they have been accused of, not necessarily convicted of, but accused of. So,
Except parking tickets.
yep, and speeding, I believe. Okay, so let's go to next policy is policy 1623. All right, so policy 1623 has been renumbered here, okay? And it's not going you're not going to see it in here. It's actually been moved. It's been rescinded and been moved to 8913. So I'll cover it at the end, okay? All right. So just so you're all aware there, okay?
I actually like that they did that. Like, there's a lot of those where there's like a repeat of 4 times the same policy for each different employee group when they really could have just used the language once for.
It worked better for but then as you say that, we're going into another one that's just like it here. It's,
Yeah, right.
So policy 1623, policy 3123, and policy 4123 is section 504, American with Disabilities Act prohibition against disability discrimination in employment. They are rescinding, okay? And these policies are rescinded once again to put in with 8913, okay? Then we have 1630 here, which,
We don't want to pull that one forward right now.
yep,
I guess I did last
1630, 3430, and 4430. So Family and Medical Leave Act. This policy is revised to remove a potentially confusing reference to the status of full-time staff eligibility for FMLA based on 1,250 work hours requirement for federal eligibility, which this does not affect Wisconsin FMLA, which only requires an employee be compensated for 1,000 hours in the previous year to be eligible for protected leave. While generally speaking, a full-time instructional staff member will be employed more than 1,250 hours in the preceding year and does not track additional hours worked as an exempt employee. The law does not require such employees to be automatically considered eligible. There may be circumstances where an individual employee, perhaps due to leave taken in the preceding year, do not meet the requirements even though they may be full-time by contract. So, family medical leave is really governed by federal law. And we do not have any flexibility with this. One of the things that right now, when a new staff member gets hired, they get hired in, maybe July, they need to take FMLA maybe for a birth of a child. They cannot take it according to state law or federal law because they don't have the time in, but we always grant unpaid leave and approve it and save their position. But we can't they are not protected through FMLA. So I just want to make sure that we still are granting leave even though they don't they do not qualify under federal law.
And this is just clarifying that 1250 is the number, and that's it. Yep.
Yep. Okay. So, policy, next one. 2340, district-sponsored trips. Oops. This over here. Okay, district-sponsored trips. This policy is revised to remove reference to non-district sponsored trips from language regarding the trip approval process. The policy language retains reference to the expectations concerning students' solicitation for such trips as part of the policy, but moves it to a standalone section. This provides a clearer process and delineation of different types of student trip opportunities that may arise in the school context. So this adoption this revision is recommended. So a couple things we did here. Number one, I think it's important that the following, you go to B here. For WA state tournaments, either returning same day or involving overnight stay is just a principal approval. And I think the other thing here is that the board does not endorse, when you go to the second page, support or assume liability in any way for any staff member, volunteer, or parent of the district who takes students on trips not approved by the board or superintendent. No staff member may solicit students of the district for such trips within the facilities or on school grounds of the district without permission from the superintendent. So it's making the policy more clear and easier for folks to read, and I believe follow.
Question with that, and I'm not sure if it was for this policy or the next one. So if there is clubs, for example, there's for the skating team, things like that are not specifically through our school district, but I feel like conversation happens within school and they're taking off of school to go. So sometimes parents of children who are staff members go. That's separate because they're parents, correct? I just want to talk through this and better understand it. Or am I making it more confusing?
I don't know what you're asking right now.
Can you
Help me, please.
clarify?
So if you've got teachers that are also parents who are part of an organization that do, like, we've always done with football, anything.
Or skating or scouting. Or,
That's what I mean.
yeah,
They're
we know.
clubs
And
as
they're
well.
riding with us, but we're acting as parents, not as teachers at the time.
That's still not a district-sponsored trip.
Yeah, it's not a district-sponsored trip, and we're in the capacity as a parent.
Not as a staff member. Okay, thank you.
Oh, I get it. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that would be, yes, that's fine.
So all they're saying is that those people can't call that district-sponsored activity, and then we are not liable for anything that happens while that's going on.
And nor can they solicit funds or anything like that during the time.
Yeah, because, that comes up with coaches that want to bring other kids along.
Right.
Okay, I see what you're saying, Kitty.
I mean, to what you're saying, then there are those parents because a teacher is on that trip, don't think it's a district trip instead of a parent trip.
Right.
Yep.
I just wanted to talk through that.
Sean, you think they'll pull these extra lines out of there too, once they'll clean that up, I think?
So it's on target on what you're.
Okay.
Okay, policy 2431, interscholastic athletics have been revised. This policy is revised to include language that prohibits performance-enhancing drugs, medications, and food supplements. So in the policy, in order to minimize the health and safety risk to student athletes and maintain ethical standards, school personnel, coaches, athletic trainers, and lay coaches should never dispense, supply, recommend, or permit the use of any drug, medication, or food supplement solely for performance-enhancing purposes. So.
No weight gain 4,000.
What's that?
No weight gain 4,000.
Well, I got a question on that. Kimberly, Bayport, y'all have actually vending machines in the schools for protein shakes and things like that, which I found fascinating that they would actually put in the school districts or in the schools for that.
We're not Kimberly.
Is there something other than food in them?
Well, it's a protein shake, like a
So
muscle milk.
it's really just,
like a muscle milk.
so it's really just food.
But
They're
that's,
not AD.
The point is, we can't promote it, which had been the practice in the past, and that's not good for our kids. and it's also writing a check the district can't cash, I believe.
Interesting.
Policy 2451, program and curriculum modifications. This policy language is revised to reflect the option included in statute for a designee of the board to deal with such requests. Districts where the process has been delegated to a designee of the board should adopt this revision to assure that the board is formally provided for that process. So in this policy here is that the board or the district needs to, shall notify students of and parents of any provision of this policy, and inclusion of such notification needs to happen in our student handbook. So that's something we're gonna have to make sure of that, but that we're doing that. But I think the big thing is that the written request shall be provided to the principal, who will provide it when appropriate to the board. We took out board and put to an administrator who is designated to handle such requests. So it just provided greater clarity.
Actually, having that flow chart of who to contact
Yes,
for parents, I think
exactly.
helps a lot with that.
Board Policy 2521, selection of instructional materials and equipment. The policy is revised to include a definition of instruction materials and instructional equipment to distinguish between the official curriculum materials provided to the students in alignment with the board-approved curriculum, as opposed to teacher-created lesson plans, assessment tools, worksheets that are not considered selected through the process described in the policy. So it provided greater clarity around instructional materials. For example, in May, I will bring you an English language arts curriculum adoption for K-5, 6-8, 9-12, social studies adoption of curriculum materials, and those all have to follow our district process. What doesn't have to is stuff that teachers create, and what I call their day-to-day work is not something that would be considered under the selection of instructional materials.
Kind of seems strange, though, that quizzes, tests, exams would not be distributed to all students, but I don't know. I got lost in the language of this one, to be honest.
I think it's the verbiage of the instructional materials, that those are not considered instructional materials, because I believe those would be generated by the teacher.
Because in our other policy, the 2510, it does say the principal source of instructional material has to be available and distributed to every student.
Yes.
So this is like extraneous stuff or additional materials, I guess?
But I think that's more along the lines of textbooks, workbooks. This is, I don't know, maybe I'm missing.
I'm just thinking some of these things in this list make no sense in this context, like quizzes, tests. Every student should get that, right? Exams, homework assignments?
But they should not, but they do not need to be adopted by the board. They're not selected by the board.
Okay.
Okay, that is the teacher autonomy part of the development. And they're not considered instructional materials for the purposes of this policy.
It makes me think of, as our teams were talking, and they were talking about when they do reteaching and reassessment. When I read this, that's what I was thinking, is not the base curriculum,
So like where
which
you're
we
pulling a
adopt,
small
but then
group of
as we're
students for more-
continuing to
okay.
assess, because that would be
Gotcha.
ridiculous to do that.
That makes sense now. Okay, yeah.
That's the way I read it.
Thanks for clarifying that.
Thank you.
In that particular 2521, it says the superintendent shall periodically provide a systematic review by the board of the district's instructional materials and equipment. And I thought that was totally inclusive, 100% inclusive. So is there a schedule for reviewing this?
You're asking the great question. We, Matt and Kristen, and just presented me about a month ago with a 7-year cycle for curriculum review that we're going to put into play, and we'll be bringing to you at some point as a report. There was not one in place when that we were aware of, and that's why I'm bringing the ELA curriculum and social studies. The social studies, I think the last time they had a new adoption of curriculum was 2012 or 2009. I know that's 3 years apart. I can't remember. It's one of the two dates. So I just think so we'll bring that to you, but we have created a 7-year schedule. You bet. Okay. And next one, policy 3110 here. Or 3120.07, okay. Employment of consultant services, we are rescinding, and this policy is removed because it is not reflective of current practice or verbiage. Consultants retained by a district are not treated as casual resources personnel, but rather via contract arrangements which are covered elsewhere in policy. The language is therefore obsolete and deletion is recommended. So where it is covered is in policy 6460, vendor relations, and 3242, professional growth requirements. So that's where it is covered. I don't know why they didn't put that in your form, but that's where it's covered. Policy 3139 and policy 4139, staff discipline. This policy is revised to include resignation as being covered in either policy 3140 or policy 4140. Language has been added with regard to investigations involving potential criminal conduct in the issuance of a garrity warning in appropriate circumstances. So I think that was written, it's pretty clear there. There are times where if there's any potential of criminal conduct in our, while we're doing investigation of a staff member, we have to give them their garrity warnings. Yes? Great question.
It's kind of like, you have to answer our questions right here in this room now, but we won't give that information up to law enforcement if you're self-incriminating while you're talking to us.
Thank you.
Yep. Couldn't have said it any better than that. Thank you. Okay.
No, different from that.
All right.
Do not have the right to remain silent, basically. It's the opposite of Miranda rights.
It's opposite, yeah. You have to talk.
Do not have the right to remain silent, but we will not tell on you. Say something.
Policy 3281 and 4281. This new policy states employees bear all responsibility for personal property brought to school. It's pretty self-explanatory. Policy 42, hold on here. Yep, hold on, 4220. Evaluation of support staff. This policy puts in place a program of support staff evaluation, so that is new. Mm-hmm.
Currently,
I don't know if we ever were using Frontline for support staff.
we weren't for support staff. We had created a different.
Yeah. So
My question is, are we using Frontline right now for teachers and administrators and so forth yet?
Yes.
Still, okay. And so then, I'm good.
Okay. Policy 4430, nursing mothers, has been rescinded. The Providing Urgent Maternal Protections for Nursing Mothers Act and the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act take effect in the next few months and will cover all public school employees and most school employees. Previously, this requirement only applied to non-exempt employees. I want to let you know that's already in effect right now because when we did this was back in December. I think it took effect on the first of the year. In response, we are recommending that policy 4430.05 be rescinded and the board add a singular policy relating to nursing mothers at policy 8700 to cover all employee groups.
Yeah,
Okay.
so in the 8,000s is where
Yep.
we're talking about everybody at the same time.
Yep. 5200, this is attendance. Revisions to this policy are made to clarify the types of student absences that require written approval versus those that may be excused by phone call, as is customary practice in many districts. The policy clarifies that any absence for physical or mental condition may be excused by a phone call. In circumstances that justify it, such as prolonged absences, the attendance officer may require a healthcare provider's written statement which excuses a student for a maximum of 30 days. Separately, a parent may, by written notice, excuse a student for any reason for pre-planned absence. The pre-planned absences for any reason must be in writing and may not exceed 10 school days, Wisconsin Statute 118.15, para 3, para C. All right. Policy 5215, missing and absent children, has been revised. This policy is revised to clarify that, consistent with state and federal programs providing for safety and assistance in the case of missing or absent children, The school will provide a safe and secure location for a child, even if not a student, during the school day until authorities can be contacted and take responsibility for the child. Current policies suggest access at any time to school buildings, even if not presently open. Policy 5350, suicide prevention, intervention, and postvention for death by suicide. It's a replacement policy. This policy replaces the existing policy to account for significant revisions. The new policy includes general prevention provisions, including instructional elements, and also provides more procedures pertinent to specific student situations involving suicide intervention. This policy was developed with the assistance of suicide prevention experts.
So does under prevention and instruction, that first paragraph, that last sentence reads, the superintendent shall also implement procedures to obtain payment or reimbursement for professional mental health services provided by any licensed treatment professional. Is that not that wouldn't be the case here where we've already got people on our staff to help with that kind of thing, or? Is that like if they had to call somebody in from the outside to help someone?
I suppose, but I think that's, I suppose.
We have systems in place, though, where the local, they can agree.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, we wouldn't have that happen to one of our students probably because we actually have a pretty nice program here.
Yes.
Okay.
I know I don't, when that happens, I'm not too overly concerned about what we have to pay to get the right people in to support the kids.
Right.
And as Katie said, there are, from clergy to Fondi cares, we have no shortage of
People
help.
who step in, yeah.
Yep, who will step in and help.
I think there's an extra word on the second page of that under postvention. I think it's supposed to read, the board recognizes that the death of a staff member or student, whether by suicide or other means, just affects the entire school and community. I don't think that is needed there.
I agree.
And there's, in the last paragraph, there's an extra space in front of suicide contagion.
Okay. Yep, I got it. Yep. Thank you. Thank you, Linda.
So that takes, supersedes this.
Yep. Yep, it's a complete policy replacement. Policy 5505 is new. It's academic honesty. This new policy is provided to address the topic of academic honesty, but also to deal with the impact of emerging technologies that make engaging and academic dishonesty more accessible, such as artificial intelligence. So this was quite a redo here of policy here, especially with the development of AI. Mm-hmm.
I use AI every day. I'm writing emails, and I just learned about it about a month ago. I'm using it. It's fun.
About the what?
AI. About a month ago, I learned about it, and we're encouraged to use it. You got an app on your phone, writing emails and stuff like that, and you tweak it. So, I kind of refer that to, in the old days, we weren't allowed to use calculators, in math. You had to use long form.
You're not going to have a calculator in your pocket every day, are you?
Now everybody can use that. So how does AI, or how are we gonna deal with AI? Because in reality, it's gonna be a function of writing, a function of literature as we go forward. I'm curious on that, on the academic level.
It's still plagiarism.
But AI just pulls anything and everything from the internet.
Well,
So anybody, if I write something today, someone could pull, or they create their own, I could be pulling from my own.
It's still not your work that's generated, so I think it's still good. So right now at the high school, we have turnitin.com where students have to submit their writing pieces to, and it gives a measurement of how much plagiarism is in the paper. And I think the important thing that we have to keep in mind is I don't know how it's going to impact the writing of papers, but the important thing here is students have to generate their own knowledge on an assignment. And I go back to doctoral studies, is that it's about generating knowledge. And if you use AI, you are plagiarizing.
But if you're using AI, you're also learning on how to write properly.
How to plagiarize?
No, how to write properly.
I'm
using my own experience
But if a student is assigned a paper, you're missing out on the experience of developing
Well,
a
it's different
thesis
than
and bringing in
having
evidence and
process there.
analysis and things
It's
like that,
different
you
than
know.
writing a paper
Yeah.
where it's evidence-based and it's knowledge, or you're reading a book and it's your
Mhm.
opinion and all that.
That's what I'm talking about. It's more that. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, because obviously you gotta form your own opinion, your own, thing behind that, that's your own stuff.
So then what are you actually talking about?
Well, I'm just
as the
asking,
issue?
as AI takes form going forward, I'm just curious on the academic world, what has been, talked about, because it's a fascinating subject to me. A month ago, when I got introduced to it, I'm like, it's made my life a lot more efficient.
Actually, a lot of educators are using it. There are a number I'm not going to say the brand there, but there's a number of names that help educators with writing IEP goals and so forth. My question with this is the tracker that we have, I've learned that some of them are, have false positives or, where they say it is plagiarized, but it really isn't, specifically with students who are bilingual. So just
Keep in mind, turnin.com gives you a percentage. So when you turn it in, is you set a percentage of what is typically okay to be plagiarized. But at the end of the day, if it's not your work and you don't give credit,
Sure.
that's a problem.
No, I'm just saying that sometimes it is the kids
Yep.
writing,
Yep.
but it's coming so.
Yep.
More positive as AI, and it's like, what if
Yeah. I'm not aware of that happening with turnin.com if you have the right threshold set.
Yeah, and I don't know, and I would hope that our
Yep.
teachers would then ask students.
Yep.
Instead of,
But, yeah, do you have notes or whatever? Yeah.
Good thing, Mark, you're copying my emails on AI.
I'm just
All right.
learning about it, that's kinda cool.
Policy 5517, student anti-harassment's been revised. It's been revised to better define the reference to the Garrity warning. A reference to the Neola provided form has also been included. So on page 9 of this is a long policy. It's 11 pages. So on page 9, same thing here. That was for this. Yep, with the Garrity. Yep. Part of the harassment policy. Yep.
Next
Pol-
one, we're in all the THC does not get to come to school.
So, policy 5530, student use or possession of intoxicants, drugs, or paraphernalia has been revised. The policy is updated to reflect the ever-changing, expanding scope of drugs and drug derivatives, particularly marijuana, CBD, and hemp, all of which are being continuously experimented with to create new and often unregulated compounds that have psychoactive effects. Schools are able to prohibit these substances, and this language is intended to provide an expansive definition to cover current versions and not yet known future versions.
So essential oils might take some education. There's a fair few families interested in those as far as,
Do they have to take them at school?
I don't know. I mean, they seem, I would have judged that as harmless myself, sending that to school with a child.
That has been issues years previously, though, because of allergies that other kids have
Mhm.
with certain scents and so forth.
Yeah, that would make sense.
So is there anything that you want us to check on? I
I was just
don't
saying,
know
make sure
anything
that
about
we're-
essential oils. I'm sorry, I
Make
don't
sure
know
that
what they
we're
are.
keeping parents up to date on what's not allowed
Okay.
at school. Like
Oh, I
this.
see what you're
Yeah,
saying. Okay,
yeah.
I don't know anything about them.
I wouldn't have thought twice about.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, and if it's
Okay.
on you for medication, emergency, that's acceptable.
Right, or like, a cotton ball of eucalyptus or something when you're feeling like Katie is over there, to kind of soothe you or whatever, Yeah. But again, that'd be prohibited under this, so,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. All right. Policy 6151, returned outstanding stale checks.
Go back to the.
Yep.
Back to the
Previous one?
previous one, specifically with all of the Delta 9 and Delta and all these, there's another form that needs to be added,
Okay.
THCA.
Did you say THCA?
THCA. Yep.
Okay, we'll check with Neola in terms of their legal definition. Okay, THCA, is that a dash A? Or
It's
just A?
It's just like the other one. It's just the THC.
See,
Is it little a or capital A?
Capital A.
But-
Dash A.
But is it each delta, then THC, then A, is there one for each one?
It's just THC.
It's completely separate.
Is it upside down because of the psychosis, or is it right side up?
It's backwards.
I'll explain it later.
We will check it. I will check, because we have to, we will check with with Neola before we add it, okay?
I was going to say, because it does say all derivatives of hemp and up on the
And there might have
top
been
front
a
line,
new
and I
one.
think they're just trying to give examples.
My
on the
question is,
underneath.
where's Delta 1 through 7? No.
Well, I'm just, yeah.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
I was going to say, I think that second line is meant to be examples, not a comprehensive list.
All right, we're on stale checks. I hate stale checks.
Okay. Are we okay with that one policy? Okay,
Mike,
stale,
we hate
stale,
stale checks.
okay. This policy is updated to include a procedure for handling payments made by check by the district that remain uncashed after a period of time determined by policy. The applicable time period may be dictated by the banking institution if the institution's checks state a period of validity, or by policy if no validity period is established by the institution. The Department of Revenue handles unclaimed property, including payments made by public entities that remain unclaimed. The process specifics may change over time, so that the recommended policy language is to consult the Wisconsin Department of Revenue's current guidance.
Do our checks say something like that, like void after 90 days, or, yeah, they do? Okay. Well, good, then we're good to go.
Okay. Policy 6610, non-district supported student activity accounts. This is a replacement. This policy revision is provided as replacement to account for significant revisions on the recommendation of school district auditors in response to GASB 84 as relates to accounts that are under the control of but not audited nor managed by the district to support specific student activities. These activities are funded by students, parents, and other organizations and are approved as appropriate student activities but do not receive direct district financial support.
What's an example of that?
Band, when they do their separate accounts for trips, fundraising.
Okay,
Booster clubs that are not held at the district.
okay,
Yep.
thanks.
Okay. Okay, next is 7250, memorials for staff and student. This policy is offered as a new policy to assist districts with requests for commemoration following the death of a student or staff member. So it just provides us guidance should we ever have to do that.
Just rescinding 6610.
Okay. Policy 7440, video surveillance and electronic monitoring. This policy is revised to provide clarification on the notification concerning monitoring collected by video and, if applicable, audio collection technology. The policy revisions also refer to the school safety plan's determination of proper location of such equipment, which may need to remain confidential. Finally, references included in the policy to electronic monitoring on school buses, including specific regulatory authority for audio monitoring in that context. A drafting note has been incorporated as well to draw attention to the lack of clarity in the law relative to sufficient notice as consent in the context of audio monitoring. So, yeah, we don't do much audio surveillance. We do video surveillance. We don't do any audio surveillance that I'm aware of, but I don't think we do. Students do it for us. So that's what actually happens. We have just video surveillance right now, but just in case we ever get there.
At some point, not for the workshop, but I don't remember where we have that. I'd like to know that.
Know what?
Where we have the video. I know the high school, we have it, and so we don't, we're on record right now, so I can ask you that off. I just don't know where, do we have it at the middle school? Is it the elementary school? Okay, thank you.
Just high school.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, 7440.02, smart monitoring equipment. It's new policy to address the emerging use of smart monitoring technology used to monitor for such things as vape smoke and alike, recommended but not required.
Artificial intelligence, Mark.
This new policy, 7540.08, is intended to address the potential impact of artificial intelligence in multiple district contexts as cross-reference to the policy.
So if all these other policies have language in them, what's the value added of this?
I think it brings all of those together to let, so when you go into a search, if you are, to me, if you go into board policies and you hit a search on artificial intelligence, it would probably take me here It would show all of them.
Go ahead. Yeah, how does this, if we've got all these
Yeah,
other,
I don't know. I think, yeah.
Well, the other one was on just specifically to dishonesty, like student dishonesty.
right, and we're not
But it's
updating all of
referenced.
these various
No.
policies, but we're just, so,
So if AI is
Mark?
part of any of these or affects any of these policies.
I'm betting you guys get a packet a few months down the road that has AI included in all of these the next time you run through them all.
Probably will be.
Mark, I have always thought
It
that
probably already has
And then they'll
changed.
rescind this.
I
No.
have
But that's
always
not for
thought
me to
that
worry
you
about.
have artificial intelligence.
Policy 8121, personal background check, contracted services. New, the policy is provided to assist districts in navigating the difficult task of protecting the security of school facilities and the safety of students with an ever-increasing reliance on contract workers in construction, work being done at school sites, and other services being performed by individuals that may have access to students. So,
Now, it doesn't say who handles that. Are we expecting the contractors and subcontractors to check their own employees?
Mike,
Yeah.
you want to take that for us, please?
Yeah, that's something that we ask, like if you're gonna be performing work, in our schools, that you usually write it into a scope of work requirement, meaning you engage a contractor, you agree to work, you agree to terms, and so, we're just gonna continue to work with all our administrators who enter into those agreements to ensure that, most of the firms that like to do work in schools know this and understand this and can provide this, so.
Okay.
It's not
And we can ask for that at any time, the background check itself? Or is that just that company or that contractor doing that with the people?
well, they're their people, and so they have to, it's essentially their firm and their liability on that side of bringing those folks through, so. In terms
We don't
of-
see it.
We never see it. I don't review those with those folks, but we can probably require them to make sure that, well, when you adopt this, that they have to have that, so.
So I'm curious, when we have people come to schools, they do the check using their license, and that's any contractors, even educational contractors, right? They have to put in their card eventually.
Do we
Or
still have that system?
We don't have that system?
Raptor.
We do.
We did.
We're in a series of renewals with it
Yep.
and making sure that we're.
It's not functional at all
fully
buildings yet.
compliant with it, but we still do have the Raptor background check system. And, like
But-
with any hardware, software technology, it's staying up to date with it. That's several years old already, so.
So how do we check when someone comes to the door?
It is the responsibility of the school building secretary to request that they provide their driver's license that runs through a basic background. It's not a full
Yep.
criminal background check.
Mhm.
That's the step one. That's the first line. And so if there's a concern or a question, they get to their building principal who makes that decision and addresses that. And if there's further questions, they call downtown.
So if a contractor goes in, we don't have them scan. This is a clarification. Do we have them scan, or do we trust that their company has done that background check?
Well, typically, like, for example, if we're having, say, plumbing work done, et cetera, we engage in a scope of work. We've engaged this firm before. We'd have a scope of work agreement with said firm that says, listen, you will provide workers that have passed a criminal background check. Therefore, when you come to our schools, they're almost always escorted by school district personnel, and it's under that arrangement that takes place. And
Okay.
so they're not running each and every time through that initial visitor check-in system, which is what you were referring to earlier.
Correct, because as a contractor, when I go to schools, they take my license and they scan it, and then once I'm in the system, I'm okay. So I was just wondering if we do that, but not necessarily when it comes to.
Not necessarily at every single, like, for example, there's a plumbing leak. We have a plumbing firm. They're come with the director of facility services and safety, the maintenance personnel, and they've been vetted through a different scope of work agreement, but
Okay.
not, because oftentimes they're not, for example, that check-in system is typically only right at the front door, in the front entrance. And so
Sure.
when school district personnel are coming to a specific place where there's a HVAC or plumbing situation, they're working on that.
I'm just contemplating, I mean, as we have people in our schools and they're not always by district staff, sometimes working and doing whatever, so I was just kind of contemplating that.
Policy,
The service contracts and everything we have, we'll have that all taken care of for us.
Well, and this policy, it takes that a step further. It sets a board expectation that takes place too. And so, I mean, it's incumbent on us as administrators to require of that and ensure that's in all of our scope of work agreements. It's something that goes up and down the entire leadership. You can't just have anybody come and do that work. So I think it's a great policy, and we're doing it, and we do it, and we're going to continue to.
Thanks.
Policy 8146, notification of educational options. This policy is revised to reflect the authority to satisfy the Class 1 notice requirement by publishing the notice on the district's website. So pretty self-explanatory policy there. Okay, policy 8310, public records revised. So there's been some change here, mostly with the duration. For records, I'm going to read a long statement here, so bear with me here, okay? The Wisconsin Records Retention Schedule for school districts was replaced by the Public Records Board in March of 2023. School districts that wish to retain public records for less than 7 years prescribed by Wisconsin Statute 19.21 may now adopt one or more general record schedules. The new schedule applicable to school districts no longer contains all public records a school district might contain. Instead, it only includes those records that are unique to school districts. If school districts adopt that schedule only, they will need to retain all public records not listed in the schedule for 7 years. If school districts adopt other schedules, they will avoid the 7-year retention period for any public records listed in those adopted schedules. DPI and PRB have identified 10 additional general record schedules that may relate to other public records retained by school districts. As such, school districts can elect to adopt up to 11 general record schedules. To do so, they will need to complete the notification of adoption form for each schedule they wish to adopt and send the form to the Wisconsin Historical Society. I'm not going to read all the rest of that. And I'm going to jump down the bottom paragraph here after the web address. At the bottom, because of the complexities that would be involved in using 11 different retention schedules, a school district may find it more beneficial to determine whether they maintain any records that are not included in the district or in the GRS that they would like to be able to destroy prior to the 7-year statutory period. If the district has such records, the school district could then consult the DPI's informational crosswalk to determine what schedule addresses the particular records and adopt a particular schedule or adopt a portion of that schedule as appropriate. It has a crosswalk there. So even if the district adopts schedules created by the Public Records Board, the law still requires that the district obtain the Public Records Board and Historical Society's approval of the schedules adopted. Lastly, it is important to note that the schedules define a minimum period of retention. Some records will be maintained for a longer period. Also, in some cases, a minimum retention period permitted will not be the best operational decision. For example, the school-specific schedule typically provides for a retention period of 1 year from the event in case of student disciplinary records. Typically, districts maintain student cumulative records throughout the period of the student's attendance in the district, which in many cases continues beyond 1 year from the date of any given disciplinary period. That is permissible despite a shorter retention period in the schedule. Note as well, the state law requires that student disciplinary records be restored within 1 year from the date that the student ceases to be enrolled in the district. This requirement is added to policy language as well. So that was a lot of reading for a little bit of green lines on the last page, okay?
So do we keep with the 7-year, or are we looking at changing?
It is my recommendation we stick with the 7 years as a minimum, other than student records have to be destroyed. Yep, absolutely. And yes, absolutely. Okay, school safety, 8420 has been revised to reflect the provision of training consistent with the school safety plan. In addition, the records retention requirement contained in Wisconsin Statute 11807 and cross-references policy 8310 public records in an effort to avoid conflict with retention requirements in light of changes to the records retention schedules produced in the Public Records Board. So, and then finally, a citation Wisconsin Statute 12102 is removed as it refers to toxic substances and lead, which is not covered by this policy. Okay. 8415 is basically this policy has been includes 8451 includes the addition of language regarding live bed bugs. Okay. Food services. So this policy has been revised to update the verbiage of USDA's required non-discrimination language and to remove reference to redundant non-discrimination language included elsewhere in the policy. Likewise, the policy is revised to incorporate dietary modification options that are not pursuant to a medical request that complies with the federal regulations for such medically based modifications, but are still based with either non-compliant medical documentation or purely individual preferences at the board's discretion. These options incorporate guidance provided by the Department of Public Instruction, can be found at that web address. Here's the other part here. Further, this policy language is revised in response to DPI auditor determinations about policy requirements regarding permissible delinquent school lunch balances. The revisions include generally remove the authority of the district administrator and place in the authority of the board the determination of set level of permissible delinquent school lunch account balance, as opposed to allowing the determination to be made by the administration. Determinations of permissible lunch balances, such that concerns, or no, pardon me, the current policy, I got mixed up here, this is about a 9 font here, set by administration's determinations based on the program experience. The current policy language does not lend itself to individualized determinations of permissible account balances, such as concerns of discriminatory practices are not realistic, merely shifts responsibility for setting the value from the administration to the board. Likewise, it is legal to set an individual responsibility between a first grade student and a high school student. The current policy language, again, provides establishing a different level of permitted delinquency by grade level, not individually, so that discrimination is not a realistic concern. So, couple things here. The DPI, we recently had an audit, and we can no longer just let our lunch debt just set without notifying parents, and we also have to continue to try to recover unpaid lunch debt.
That's
And
DPI policy?
it's actually federal money at stake here. The DPI came into an audit here. Okay, and Mike, I'll turn this over to you because you can probably add to that because you were highly involved in that.
Yeah, well, food service programs regulated by the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and so this policy is in compliance with this. There's been a long sort of debate within the state about the interpretation on this guidance. That is it administratively set? Is there a discrimination element? How do you make determinations on what is permissible or not? And there's a real tension point with boards and in communities on negative balances. Essentially, families that either A, cannot pay or can pay. And what is the appropriate balance? You might have heard of things about the idea of meals being taken away in the lunch line, and many boards and communities deeply uncomfortable with this, but there's a tension here with the policy. And so really what has to happen is the board, from the federal regulation, local boards, along with the DPI, are requiring, and there's a funding element that if we participate in the National School Lunch Program, boards have to take action and say, this is the allowable negative meal balance, period. No questions asked. And so you'll see the policy says it's 1 week's worth of student meals, which amounts to $17.75 for a pure elementary student and $19.50 for a secondary, middle, or high school student. That's 1 week's worth, as if there was no money on the account and meals would be charged. That's the negative balance. And it's set by 1 week, not as a rough number like $20. so that every year you don't have to go back and say, well, now it's 20, now it's 25. It will always be whatever when you take action on meal prices. And so really what we're doing is getting in compliance with this. There's been a lot of confusion in communities over the pandemic and the stimulus funds. There was a lot of monies that went to support families and meal charges. And so this is where we find ourselves. We've been through that audit. We have to get compliant. And I've already had a number of really positive conversations with our new this year, food service vendor who Chartwells. And really, we feel this just needs to be over and out communicated, because I think the majority of people are a little bit probably like, well, isn't the federal government providing free meals or things like that? And it's just not the case, really. And so our point is we are going to continue to serve creditable meals. We will be not doing an alternate meal or any type of meal pull away from families. But the communication, we're going to ask our principals and staff to step it up if and when families get into a situation where they have a negative meal balance and have not completed or do not qualify a free and reduced meal application, because I think many, many people are not fully certain that they qualify. There's a number of reasons. And so we just got to really have a big effort to out-communicate this. But what we need tonight, you are really, not tonight, but once this goes through second reading, you'll be setting that 1 week standard. And so we're going to do a communication effort with our families and go there. And so I'll entertain any questions. I mean, it's not something, right now we've been sort of in this middle of being able to sort of try to navigate through it, and the DPI and the USDA say no boards take action now. So that's where you find yourself with this policy. Go ahead.
There used to be communication, like the minute it went negative, and then like, okay, now it's really negative, you need to do something about this. Like is that not happening? Like it's tracked in Skyward. I'm looking at mine right now.
That's
So
correct.
doesn't Skyward trigger a notification?
Those notifications are currently off in the district.
Oh.
And so where we're at is, you may recall, last summer, I mean, when you set meal prices, we discussed that component of the unpaid meal balance element of it, and they've been off since the pandemic at that start. And so we need to get back onto that track.
Yeah.
And so what happens is unpaid meal balances are known as bad debt, and that has to get written off from local general funds. That's where that fund transfer, you may recall from the budget presentations, Fund 50 operates separately. But federal monies cannot support bad debts, so those have to come forward. So.
Okay.
Mike, I heard you say 1 week, but I didn't see 1 week in this policy. Is that what you're recommending?
No, it's in there.
Okay, I didn't see it.
If you take a look further down, you shall see.
Oh, I'm
It's
looking.
Negative account balances.
Yeah,
Not to
sorry, I
exceed
was
an
looking
amount
on this one, not
equal to
this one.
school week of regular
Thank
meal
you.
price. And then
Thank you.
you may see you can see where the verbiage was a little gray, and many boards had this same struggle. And
This sets it.
this will really set it, and honestly, we're prepared to take on the communication effort. Again, families aren't, no one's really being denied that meal. We really need to up our encouragement of free and reduced meal processing and applications. That
And do we still have schools that are, the whole school is covered
Correct.
right now? Okay.
does not impact the community eligibility provision schools. Currently, our CEP schools of Riverside, Chegwin, and Parkside, based on free and reduced meal status. Frankly, if we could have better participation in our free and reduced meal application, perhaps, although
More schools would be
more
covered
schools
then.
might get closer to that, and the USDA is also trying to encourage CEP eligibility. So there are some really win-wins in here. I know the conversation tonight kind of might feel like, gosh, this is a takeaway, lose situation. I actually see this is a win-win for the district. One, we need to get compliant. Two, there can only really be upside for getting better participation in our programs. So, but this is a necessary step that we have to take. And I would not say there isn't going to be people that will have confusion or concern or a question. We have, and invest in our food service staff and our new food service vendor. We've been ongoing working with them. We're ready to do the communication with them. So if you get contacted by a concerned family or person, you send them to the school so that we can help address that.
Yeah.
Other questions?
So then if we do this, will the families be communicated with when they go
Yes.
on the negative? Because to be completely transparent, our account is probably in the red by enough, and I know when the audit went through, our name was on the list also, and it's not because we don't pay it. We get no
It's just 'cause you don't
notification
know.
that it's,
Well-
Yeah, you
that
don't
it's
know.
low, and then my kids will come home and be like, oh, so-and-so said we need lunch money, and I'm like, okay, put that on the list of 27 million other things that I have to remember to do tonight, and then it's 3 weeks later. So like, I think that could potentially help tremendously if
Yeah.
families are
So when you
being
find out you're
reminded.
minus a quarter versus minus $57 or whatever.
It's probably been higher than that.
Do we have to wait to turn that on for a new year, or could we do that sooner?
2,700.
Well, Mrs. Motor, the point was, the board policies before
Yes.
was a little
Yes.
great. We knew we had a food service audit review here at the end of January. Neola has been working with the DPI. The short answer is certainly, we could turn it on, but without the right communication.
Sure.
Lead and context. And
Sure.
And
Yep,
frankly,
yep.
discussion at a board level.
Sure.
We don't think that's the right way to do. So I would say by the end of March, if there's people listening and concerned or having questions about the why, within the month, that will be going to be activated. So, and if families at any time are concerned about a possible balance, we can make those arrangements. And as always, the district makes every opportunity to make it easy for families to pay. We take payment plans, we work with them, we help them go through the free and reduced meal processing. It's in multiple languages, we engage interpreters. Like, frankly, I think it's just an awareness piece, that we need
Right.
to do a better job helping families understand.
Well, and again, easing back into kind of where we were before COVID, where, you were expected to pay lunch money when it went negative, and we need to start communicating that it is negative, so.
Brittany, I appreciate your transparency, like because that it's.
I've totally been there. I mean, I get,
Not necessarily because they're not wanting to, it's just like it's not.
Well, and before Skyward, it was your kid would come with this big crumpled piece of paper that'd been in the bottom of their backpack for a week and a half and hand it to you saying, Mom, we owe lunch money. I'm like, okay, now how bad is it after this went? Yeah, right, exactly.
Brittany, my suggestion is to do item 2701 and actually make lunch.
My kids probably take a lunch and eat lunch, because they take a lunch break with them every day, and then we still are in the red in their lunch account. So anything we do on top.
I think you just don't use until
They wouldn't let them walk in graduation. Yeah, right.
All right, let's keep moving.
Yeah, can I ask questions on page 3 of the same policy, though? Because there is a space in, like, maybe 40% down the page where it says, but notify the coordinator by 9 a.m. or enter a time. Are we just going to leave it at 9 a.m. for our purposes?
What page are you on?
On page 3 of this policy,
Oh.
under student absence, yeah, sorry, there's under
Yeah.
the student absence title. Do we need to enter a different time or just let it be 9 a.m.?
I think 9 a.m. is the safest time. That's about as late as we can go for a special dietary.
Okay, and then under meal charges, they changed it to, and we used to have to, I remember this, they used to spend the extra funds on cafeteria equipment or something like that. So now it says shall be used in a manner permitted by law as determined by the superintendent. Is that because, like you said, we can't use that to pay down other students' debt or
One,
whatever?
Yes, as one element, but
Okay.
the.
And no more
it's
cafeteria equipment?
prescriptive, And the budgetary guidance and spending guidance changes.
Okay.
I think it the policy backs off and allows some flexibility in that.
Because I know we've done a number of kitchen renovations, I think, for that reason, but now we can just have more flexibility with what we can do if we do have overages.
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
Policy 8531, free and reduced meals. This policy was revised to update language to ensure it matches with the USDA's required non-discrimination language, which we just saw in the previous policy, so it's pretty clear there, I believe. And then policy 8700 is a new nursing mothers policy. So I talked about that earlier. So that is new and puts it all in one place. And then the last policy, no, second to last one, hold on here. Third to last, Section 504 ADA prohibition against disability discrimination employment. This policy is added as a consolidation, as I talked earlier about policy 1623, 3123, and 4123. And I believe there are really not a whole lot of new I'm just double checking the modifications
I
here.
was gonna say, the ones I was thinking were a little strange, we're on page 3, that
was
middle
on 4.
section that's being eliminated, it basically is, you're eliminating the notice of right to file.
I think it's stated,
It's stated somewhere else.
There's probably a whole complaint procedure policy.
yeah, hold on here. I think it's on, well, it really, they can still file a complaint with the Office of Civil Rights too, which is on page 4. So they still are able to still file a complaint, so,
And then the extension from, in part C, toward the bottom of that same page, it's going from 10 to 60 days for us to respond.
yes.
Okay. And
Which
that's
is good.
by law, or, I know
Yes.
it's good, but yeah, you get a bit more thorough investigation probably, but, okay. And then I see the Gary
Yeah,
warning again.
it's
Okay.
good for everybody to have response in 10 days. It's not just, that's not a one-sided improvement. That's both for us to respond to the complainant promptly.
They give you the extra time in case you need it.
So, and then policy 9210 is rescinded, and is covered in policy 9211. So 9211 is district support organizations, and this policy is revised to add an option to include requirement that any organization described in this policy requires advance permission to use any of the district's identifying logos, name, and if applicable, slogans or taglines used by the district at one of the schools in the district, so. So that is the reading of update volume 32, number 2, so.
I move the Board of Education adjourn the workshop.
Second? Uh-oh.
Are we meeting on the 4th of March?
We do have a meeting next Monday for board docs training. It's not a meeting, it's more, it's a training session. It'll be, but it is posted because it will involve the entire board. And Katie, we have it recorded for you on Zoom, because it's gonna be via Zoom, okay? With the board docs training. It's all board docs training. There will be no other there will be no business
So
conducted.
we log in from home then, or?
I suppose you
We'll talk after.
I suppose you could log in home, but we were gonna have it here. Right?
You don't have to be there.
Okay.
We were
Can I
gonna
have
have it
that on?
here.
You're all good to go.
But if you wanna go virtual, you can.
I'll be here.
Make
All
sure
good
I
to
have
go.
that on my calendar correctly.
That's fine. We can set
I
you
have
up.
it on my
We
calendar.
can set
it's
you
fine.
up via Zoom.
Wait,
Sean?
5 o'clock, 5 o'clock?
5 o'clock.
Okay.
Yeah, just email myself, please, all right?
Time of adjournment?
I haven't adjourned yet because we're all still talking.
Oh, all in favor of adjourning?
We have a motion by Henschel, seconded by Usselman. We are going to adjourn at 8:04 PM.